They're using AI to automate the entire insurance approval process for storm restoration companies.
Is it taking my photos and going, yeah, that's damage or not?
You can do this right now. If you download the ChatGPT app, you can literally take a picture of the real world and say, like, what is that? This is trained specifically to identify, like, is it storm damage? Is it hail damage? And then not only does it analyze it, it literally automates a description so that the insurance adjuster will be able to say, like, oh, yeah, you know what I mean? And it automates everything.
And there's a lot of contractors out there that are probably listening to this that hate this. How big of a thing is this AI thing? You remember a computer? I see, you remember this thing when it came out like that? You think that was a big thing? Well, just imagine those two things just got married and took steroids and became the Incredible Hulk.
Welcome everybody to another episode of the RILLA Labs, where we talk about the science of sales and science-based skills that you can take into your business, into your sales process, into your coaching game to better up your people. Today, we are going to be talking to Jim Johnson. He is the founder and CEO of Contractor Coach Pro, which is one of the leading sales coaching organizations and leadership coaching organizations in the roofing and general home services industry. We're going to talk about Jim's story, how he started as a gym trainer who actually ended up doing sales for the gym. He sold his company to AccuLynx, the big roofing CRM. And we talk about how he came to be a contractor coach and how he came to be here. We talk about leadership. We talk about culture. We talk about sales processes and how to level up your people. This was one of my favorite podcasts that we've done so far. So please take a listen. So, Jim, welcome on the show, man. Thank you so much for being on here.
It's a blast. We're excited to come to New York. My wife found out, like, hey, this thing's going to be in New York City. So I was going to fly on Sunday night and leave Monday afternoon. We flew in Friday. We spent the whole weekend
yes,
here.
Sir.
Had a good time.
You put that on a business expense. I like that.
Yeah, exactly, yes.
It's like, well, I was like, why? What are you doing business in Times Square?
Yeah,
at 12 a.m. on a Saturday. So, no, man, I'm glad to have you. I know I've been to New Braunfels a lot of the time. So this is the first time we're meeting in New York, right?
Yeah. Actually, I rode a subway for the first time ever. So
no way.
Yeah.
This is your first time in New York City?
First time for anything enjoyable.
Wait, what was the non-enjoyable stuff?
Work stuff.
So, okay. I mean, this is kind of work stuff. So this is fun.
Yeah.
This is some fun time. So very cool. When was the last time you were in New York?
Let's see, 13, 14 years ago, somewhere in there.
13, 14 years ago.
Yeah, we were meeting with Allied Building Products, figuring out how to get pricing into AccuLynx is what we were working on.
That's so fun.
Yeah.
That is so fun. And so, awesome, man. So listen, it's great having you on the show. You were one of the first people that I met in this industry. I don't know if you remember this, but we met in IRE 2022. I think it was in New Orleans, right? That time. And you saw us at our booth. And you're like, what is this about? And I just pitched you RILLA. And I saw your eyes like go big, like, holy crap, this is something big. And from that moment onwards, I met you, I met Chuck. You guys introduced us to Dean from Engage.
Yep.
And thereafter, we started doing the top rep events. I don't know if you knew this, but before you found us, we were kind of doing the storm restoration. We were selling to a lot of roofers. And it wasn't until we met you guys that we started seeing that the home improvement industry was a much larger industry than what we thought. It wasn't just storm restoration, because at the time you guys were doing all the coaching on how to transition to being insurance sales reps, to retail sales reps, and how to actually do a sales pitch, and how to actually, and how to handle objections, how to do a company story and the whole sales process. And that, when we started finding those kinds of customers that actually really care about following a sales process, that really care about, doing a whole hour or 2 hour appointment, that's when we started really growing really fast. You literally met us. I think when we met you, we had just started selling for a month ago. Mm-hmm. We barely had any money in the bank. So
things have changed.
Yeah. The way I thought about you, and we met Paulie B, our good friend Paul Burleson. He was in the podcast a couple episodes ago, and we met him at a top rep event. It's like, kind of the way I think about it is like we were out in Tatooine, and you were like our Obi-Wan Kenobi, who showed us that there was a much bigger galaxy out there. And so, yeah, man, thank you. I never thanked you for that. So you kind of found us. So, and now we're here. So
it was my honor, because whenever I met you guys, I don't know if I think I shared it with you. Like, you built the thing that I had been thinking about for about 5-6 years, that there's going to be this way to test your skill as a salesperson with technology and make you better with it. Like where it recorded you, it can tell you what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong, tone, using the word too much, like those type of things. I always had this vision that somebody was going to make that thing. And if I could get to it first, like that would be a great thing. Well, you beat me to it and I don't have time for it anyway. Yeah. And Engage, you mentioned them, they're the other one. Like they're the one that went, hey, a presentation can be different than what it is today. They should really be more interactive than what they are. They shouldn't be linear. They should be able to go to the thing that you want to talk about. And so seeing those two things kind of come out at the same time, like, man, magic right there.
Yeah, and that's what I loved about you guys. Like you guys immediately when you met me, without asking for anything in return, really, like you and Chuck, you literally said, oh, you got to meet Dean from Engage.
Oh yeah.
First time I met Dean from Engage, I was like, oh, there's other tech people building really interesting products out here. I started talking to Dean and we started figuring things out all together. And we very quickly from there, that's when we really hit that insane acceleration, right? So of growth. And that was like, you know, in part due to the great work that you guys have done to like bring sales coaching to the industry, to bring like this idea of sales excellence. It is like you think it's like a normal thing now. Like everybody has a sales process. Everybody kind of has some sort of coaching system.
You wish.
But that really is like the companies that adopt it, the contractors that actually do care about implementing a rigorous sales process, making sure that everybody's following a system. That's not very common, and most contractors don't do it. And it usually becomes a secret weapon. And a product like RILLA doesn't work unless you have contractors buy-in into the whole idea of following a sales process. Because if you have no sales process, you have no sales, then what the hell is RILLA going to track, right?
Well, you don't have anything to measure.
Correct.
It's just chaos when guy saying what a guy wants to say, and you cannot compare that to this system that you've put into place. Where what's really nice about RILLA is if you have a crappy system, it'll tell you.
Yeah, it'll be like, hey man, this is not working.
Maybe adjust your
well.
process just a little bit.
And so, but without having a sales manager or a sales coach that can sit there and actually review the analytics to say, we just give you the analytics, we just give you the data, but you have to have somebody in the back end who's like really well sales oriented, who understands all the nuances of the process to be able to say, oh, this means, you know, the fact that you're spending 2 minutes on the company story means that you're not spending enough time. If without having the sales mind, the sales science behind it, it doesn't really work. And you guys kind of like warmed up the industry for a product like RILLA to exist, because without the work that you guys did, nobody would have been able to use it.
I think it's one of the biggest deficiencies in home service contracting. You can see the big guys, you know, the Power Homes of the world that are out there. They have some great coaches. They have some great folks that understand sales, know the process, know the system, know the art of it as well as the science of it, and so can coach and teach to it. Where I think most folks in home services just follow what it was that somebody taught them and don't really know why they're doing it the way they're doing it. So without any kind of insight into the why you're saying what you're saying, when you're saying it, for how long you're going to say it, it's hard to coach off of the data that you give unless the person that's working for that company has invested time into becoming a good coach.
And so let's talk about becoming a good coach. How why are we here, man? How did you end up here? Tell me, like, give us you've told me before. I know you have a really interesting story, but tell it, you know, there's all the RILLA customers watching, a lot of owners of contracting businesses. They probably know a little bit about you, kind of heard about you, know about you, about Contractor Coach Pro and all the good work that you guys do. But how did you end up here? How, tell me the origin story of the Obi-Wan Kenobi of sales. Yeah.
We got a minute? It's really weird. Like, it was never the plan. The plan was always I was going to be a pro baseball player. Like, that was the game plan. I ended up getting hurt. Moved back home. My parents were like, you're not going to be able to stay here. And I ended up in my car. Like, that's where I was. I was living in my car. And
how old were you when this happened?
I was 18.
18
years old. And so ended up living in a car. And I was like, what do I do now? I have no idea. The only thing I know is baseball, and I do know like how to be in good shape. So I know it's hard to tell today, but back in those days, it used to be. And so I said, hey, I'm going to go check out a health club and see if I can be like a fitness guy. Like, can I be a coach to those guys? Teach other people how to get in shape. So I walk into this health club, and the health club's like, no, we don't have those guys. I'm like, well, you should. Like,
and just to make sure, a health club's a gym, right?
Yeah, gym.
Okay.
Workout place, health club, gym, physical fitness, like Planet Fitness or 24-hour fitness, any of those type of things. And so I said, you really should have somebody like that. It would attract other people to the club. You would get people actually in shape, which is what they're here for. And whatever I sell my services for, I'll split with you. So another revenue center. And they went, hey, that sounds like a pretty good idea. And I did that for all of 3 weeks.
Okay.
That went really well. I had lots of people, and I was coaching a lot of people on their fitness programs. But one day, a family came walking in the door. All the salespeople were busy. The manager was busy. And I was like, hey, I know what they do. I've watched them. They give a tour. I can do that part, and then I'll hand you off to one of the folks. They're like, that sounds great. So I give them the tour, show them how I'm going to, set up their fitness program, tanning beds, all the equipment, the free weights, and all the stuff, right? And we get all done, and everybody's still busy. And now I'm like, I don't really know what to do. I just know they go in that office over there.
Yeah.
And the family was like, well, what does it cost to join? I said, well, why don't you come in the office? I've seen the price sheets on the wall. I can just pull them down and I'll show you. They said, sounds great. So we walk in, set the price sheets down. It looks like we have this one, and this one. This one does this one does that, and this one does this. Which one is going to be the right one to fit your family to get you to your health goals? And they go, well, that one. I went, all right, great. And I grabbed a contract that was hanging on the wall too, filled it out to the best of my ability. I said, I think I'm supposed to get a check, so can you write that out? And they went, yeah. So you get all done, and I walk them to the front door and shake their hands and everything, and they're going out the door, and the manager is running. I mean, he's sprinting across the gym.
Oh, geez.
Screaming at me. What the fuck are you? He's like saying, like, it was all words I don't say anymore. And so I'm like, dude, chill out, man. Like, they signed up. It's yours. I'm going to go do what I do. And he looks at me, he's like, holy shit. I'm like, what? Did I do something wrong? He goes, no. He goes, you sold them the Family Gold membership. I went, yeah, that's the one they wanted. He goes, yeah, but you sold it to them at full price. I went, yeah, so? He goes, we've never sold a membership at full price before, ever.
Huh.
I'm like, really? Why? He goes, well, those are knockdown sheets. You're supposed to take them in there, cut the price in half if they'll join today, and then you sell them a membership. Well, nobody ever showed me that part. And why would you do that? That's stupid. They were willing to pay more. Like, if the value's there, they're going to pay for it. He goes, you think you could do that again? I'm like, it didn't seem all that hard. And so owner comes down. He asked me how I did it. He goes, okay, we want to test this. Why don't you go ahead and you be sales for a week? And I'm like, all right. So sold for a week. I missed one family in a week, but they came back out of 13. So 13 sales. Okay. I got 12 of them.
90% plus
all at full price. All at full price. Did not do any knockdowns or anything.
How long were these appointments? These like little show and walk arounds?
Full thing, probably 30 to 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Like you're going to really, well, that was one of the things I noticed. And they asked me, like, what's making the difference? I said, well, your guys are trying to figure out how fast they can get to that office.
Right.
I'm over here figuring out how can I get them to buy into changing their fitness goals.
Right.
Like, what is the thing? And he goes, do you think you can teach that? I said, I don't know. I've never really done any of that kind of stuff before.
Was that your first time actually selling and it was by accident?
Kind of like in a professional setting.
Yeah.
But one thing going back historically is any of those like little sales contests as a kid and that kind of stuff, I won every one of them. Like that was just
like what were you selling as a kid?
I remember we were selling magazines in 10th grade for like the junior prom. Like you had to, we were the slaves for the junior and senior prom. So we had to go and sell magazines to pay for the next one. And there was this will tell you how old it was, how long ago this was. There was a TV that was a box like this big, about 1.5 feet by 1 foot wide, and had a black and white screen on it. And that was the grand prize. Okay. Like to win that thing was the grand, and I wanted it so bad.
You wanted that TV.
Yeah. And so I sold a little over 1,000 magazine subscriptions.
Okay. So you had a little bit of experience.
Yeah, next closest was about 120.
So you had enough reps in you that it kind of just was like automatic by that point.
A bit of it was natural. Like I didn't ever have a problem talking to people. Like, that's never been an issue.
You were naturally extroverted.
Yeah.
It's really friendly.
Although, funny enough, I don't really consider myself an extrovert. I would actually rather be where it's quiet, where I can think, where I can really create and do some things along those. That's where my best work is done.
Interesting.
But when I'm in a setting with people, I enjoy it. It's not like I don't like it.
Well, yeah, that's the difference between the extroverts and the introverts. If you put an extrovert and they start interacting with people, like I'm insane. I'm like, it's a spectrum, right? It's like I'm insanely on the extroverted side. Yeah, so like the extroverts, it's like you're getting, anytime you talk to people, you get coins and you get energy and you feel like energized. Like when I go to a conference, I literally, and you've seen me at conferences, I talk, I speak, and then at the end of the day, like 8 p.m., 9 p.m., I go back and do all my work because I can't go to sleep because I'm like literally like.
And I'm the opposite. Like I'm full,
so you get tired.
I'm full energy, but it's like you're sucking the battery out of it.
Interesting.
Yeah. So whenever I get done, I'm like, dude, I need a break.
So you're probably an introvert with like an insane amount of energy.
Funny, I've done some research into this, and there is a description for this called an ambivert.
Ambivert.
And so you enjoy being in in an extrovert setting.
Yeah.
You get energy from it, but whenever you're done and you've been
feel exhausted.
Yeah, you feel exhausted.
Interesting.
Yeah, I go to sleep right away.
Wow.
No
That's
problem.
interesting.
Yeah.
So then you started this, so you basically started at this gym.
Yep.
You did your process, you did the good, better, best options, you figured out how to sell it. And then
it was actually one of the best things because they found out that I had some skill or talent there. And it's one of the things I'm most thankful for in my life. They invested heavily in me. They went, hey, this kid has got some natural like ability. Let's like make him something great. And they sent me to everything and anything. And not just like go to a seminar. It was like go through the certification courses. So Sandler Sales System, Zig Ziglar Sales System, Tom Hopkins Sales, like all of them. I got certified, like fully certified, where I could go out and actually teach that stuff if I wanted to. But I was doing it for the health clubs.
And you were teaching the other people.
I was teaching the other people.
How many people were you coaching at
Well,
the
it's
time?
funny. I sold for a week, and they said, okay, you're a salesperson. And that lasted for about 3 months, and I became a manager for that location. Yeah. That lasted for about 6 months, and I became the manager for the 5 locations.
Okay.
I then bought 2 locations, so that made it 7. We created franchises, grew it to 40 within 3 years.
40 franchises.
40 franchises in 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I was telling Garrett, your guy that's really young.
Yeah.
He's like 22. And I was like, yeah, man, I love the fact that you're doing what you're doing because at 19, I was doing similar.
Yeah, you were literally coaching since you were 19 years old.
I was negotiating leases. I was buying equipment. These people were looking at me like, are you old enough? Like, are you able to do this?
Wow.
And so I ended up being, within 18 months, I was vice president of sales for the health clubs. So
what was the name of the company?
they were called, this is a funny part, this part where you're going to get a giggle. Because there's a reason I went there. They were called Texas Lady Spas. It was a ladies only, except for there was Texas Lady Texan, which is a co-ed club. So they had ladies only on one side, co-ed on the other. And that was the one I went to thinking, hey.
Because you're going to get all the girls.
You're going to get a lot of, hey, come on, you're 18, 19 years old, right?
That's so funny, dude.
And sure enough, I married an aerobics instructor.
That is so funny how the 18-year-old brain works, man. I'd be like, yeah, man.
Feel like it was a great place to be.
I want to go with the girls around. And then you end up making a career out of it. That's awesome.
There's a reason I took gymnastics in college.
Isn't that why all of us do all of this?
At that age, at least. At that age.
That's so funny. And so you're literally coach. So you've literally been a coach for like decades then.
Yeah, let's see. That's 35 years.
35 years.
35
wow,
years.
Man. And so okay. So you're running this health club. Basically, you're like the VP of sales, and you're running a bunch of locations. You're making good money, probably.
Oh, I'm doing pretty good.
You're like 19. How did you fit? Like, where's the gap? How did you go from health club to doing contracting?
That's a good story. I'll leave names out to protect the innocent, but the owners of the club were doing things that I didn't know about.
I see.
That were nefarious. Let's just put it that way. I was informed of the situation, and I was also married at the time to an aerobics instructor. I would advise against that. It's not usually the best choice. We're friends now, but that didn't end well. So I sold my 2 health clubs and got out of it.
Okay.
Because I knew this was coming down, and we won't get into the details of it. But because I'm not supposed to. But it went awry. And so went through a divorce, lost my 2 clubs, had all this money going, like everything is great, and then it's like all gone, right?
Yeah.
Except for I did sell my clubs, and so that was a stockpile, but what am I going to do next?
How old were you when this happened?
22.
Wow.
Yeah, about 3 years time
You
span.
did the whole
Whirlwind,
American roller coaster, be like high, low, low, just get everything, lose everything. Jesus Christ, man.
And my buddies were amazing because they were like, they hated my girlfriend or ex-wife so badly.
Yeah.
They're like, we're going to throw a party. And so we're going to have a divorce party.
Yeah.
It's going to be at this place at this time. You got to be here. We're going to celebrate.
It's like another bachelor party.
Yeah, it was like a freedom party.
Yeah.
And because she would never like allow me to go hang out with my friends. She had to know where I was. It was rough. And so I drive into the parking lot to go to that party. I'm like, man, this is terrible. You should not be celebrating.
Yeah.
Like, that's a bad thing. And so instead, I drove through the parking lot, crossed the road, went into the other parking lot of the new bar across the road. And I walked in the door, and right inside the door, like I walked in 10 steps, there's this pod of 5 girls standing there. And I'm like, I don't want anything to do with girls, but still, I'm 22 years old. All right. And so I look over, I'm like, oh man, she has amazing eyes. And I remember thinking that. And I walked up past, no girls. And walked over to like the rail on the dance floor, grabbed a beer, came back over, turned around. And this girl standing in front of me, the girl with the eyes, and says, hey, would you like to dance? And that's Michelle.
Damn, she asked you out, man.
Yeah, she did. Yeah.
She does. I always had it in my head that I was like, I think she was the one who made the move.
She was. Yeah.
So yeah, now you guys are married.
Yeah. So
well, you've been married for a long.
I met my wife of 31 years by avoiding a divorce party. So that works out pretty good.
That's awesome, man. That's it. Good things happen when you have the right compass.
Talk about good things. Like I always say, like if it wasn't for her, I would be buried in a desert outside of Vegas somewhere, probably.
To be teaching aerobics, man.
Well, I didn't teach any of that. No, I didn't do any of that.
You've been doing sales, yeah. So then you met your wife, now Michelle, who I know, and you got a beautiful family together.
Yeah.
Your son still works for Contractor Coach Pro.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
He runs all of our technology. He does an amazing job of it. Created our whole platform and everything.
And one of your daughters is a lawyer or something like that.
Daughters, yeah. I told all of them, get out of our. Don't be in this world, and all 3 of them are.
Yeah.
So
because she does insurance, right?
She's an attorney in the insurance world. She's one of the best out there.
Yeah.
Steve Badger doesn't like her, but he likes her type of thing. She's good at what she does, but he has a lot of respect for her. And then my youngest, she graduated this past May, like a year ago now. And she was going for corporate buying psychology. Like, why do people buy what they buy, especially in a technology world? And she had jobs lined up, Facebook, Google, like all that kind of stuff. She's really good. And they cut all those jobs like in February.
Right.
And she's going to go to work in May. And I don't know what to do now.
So she got in the business.
And with a psychology degree, she's in the supplementing world, and she does pretty well with it.
That's what our good friend Dave Yoho did. He took psychology and started applying it.
Well, now she's testing the waters in sales right now to see what that looks like.
Wow, look at that. Yeah. A family of salespeople, man. It's literally like a sitcom waiting to be made out there with like a whole family.
I'm like, no, you guys can chill. Yeah. It's okay.
So you're 22 years old. You're getting your stuff started again. You kind of, lost a lot of the things that you had. You meet Michelle. You guys have a beautiful family. What happened? How did you go from being 22, knowing a little bit about sales coaching? How did you get started?
She tricked me.
Okay.
She took me to Wisconsin in the summertime. And I was like, hey, this is great. This is beautiful. Because she wanted to be home. She was counting the days to go home whenever she met me.
Because you guys met in Texas.
Yeah, we met in Texas.
Why was she down in Texas?
She was teaching. You could only get a teaching job in Texas or Alaska. That was the only 2 places.
Okay.
And so she chose Texas instead of Alaska. I think she probably regrets it still to this day. I think she might have had a better experience.
Yeah.
But she wanted to go home. And I said, well, I can make money anywhere. I'm not really worried about that. Let's go check out Wisconsin. So we fly up in July, beautiful weather. And all of you out there that think Wisconsin's like frozen tundra land.
Yeah.
In the summertime, it's green. There's rivers everywhere. It's hilly. It's beautiful.
Dude, you're telling me that. I was just there in Madison visiting a couple of customers.
Beautiful, right?
Well, no, I went in January.
Oh, snow. Yeah, it's terrible.
And it was just all white. Yeah. And it's like you go to the Midwest. I was also in Chicago traveling. The sidewalks are frozen, so you're slipping. You can't walk anywhere because it's all ice. Like, Jesus. So everything you're telling me sounds like
I didn't know that part. I'm like, this is great. Summer's wonderful. And then I asked, like, hey, what kind of fish are in these rivers? She goes, trout. I'm like, oh man, I'm a big fly fisherman. I could live here.
Yeah.
So we decided we're going to move because she wants to be home. And we moved up in December. And I opened the door to get out of the vehicle. I went, oh, shut the door. Like, hey, man, it's cold out. It was 6 degrees outside. I had never seen it that cold in my entire life. Like, that's not a temperature. That's a baseball score.
Yeah, you got bamboozled, man. You got sold.
She sucked me in, but we lived there for 18 years. I did a few things first. Like, I went to work for a home builder. So I learned how to build homes and stuff like that. And kind of went that route. I went to work for a Class A painting company. So they painted like Toro lawnmowers and the buttons on your Ford trucks. And each one of those places, I would rise up and be in manager or management positions.
And you always be doing sales, right?
And one day I got laid off and was surprised. Like I've never been fired or let go of anything I've ever done. And so she comes home and she's like, what are you doing home? I said, well, I got a new job. So between the time I got laid off at 9 a.m. and by 4 p.m. when she got home, I had a new job.
Okay.
And I had looked in the newspaper. I was like, hey, you know, what's out there? What can I do? And there was a job for being a home inspector.
Okay.
I went, that sounds great. Like home inspector, this sounds pretty easy. And it was like $75,000 to be a year.
Oh, wow.
Be a home inspector, $75,000 a year. I went, that sounds wonderful. So I show up at this interview and I'm not the only one there. There's like 9 other guys all in this same interview room.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is weird. Okay, I don't like this already. This is some kind of like bait and switch deal. And sure enough, in comes walking like a dude that you knew was from California. He had the fake blonde hair, fake tan, orange suit, purple shirt, orange tie. And I'm like, okay, I absolutely hate this now. Not my vibe at all. And I'm just counting the seconds till I can get out of there. And he's giving me the whole rigmarole about the company and the whole bit. And then I had another guy come in that actually knew something about what it was they were interviewing for, which is this insurance restoration side of things.
Right.
So don't forget, I had the retail side from the home builder and all that good stuff. We've already done that.
And you did painting.
Now I'm in this insurance world.
Yeah.
And he said something that I'll never forget. He goes, so all they have to do is pay their deductible. I went, okay, so what you're telling me, they're going to get a $10,000 back in those days, $10,000 home repair for $250, $500.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, absolutely. I went, that's not sales. Anybody can do this. Why in the world can you not do this? Like, it's like selling Mercedes for $500. Like, why would you not do good at this? Sign me up. How do I get started?
Yeah.
He goes, well, we're not sure we're going to hire you yet. I'm like, okay. I'll finish up. They get all done. Well, we'll call you back on Friday and let you know. I'm like, all right, great. So I get a call back on Friday and come for training on Monday. Show up for training on Monday. Same 10 guys. Everybody got hired. Yeah. You could fog them there. You're going to be in there.
The conversion rate's a whopping 100%.
And then they gave us 2 days of awful training, which was better than most training that the other companies gave, I found out later, and sent us on our way. And I had a question for them. I come from like a real sales background.
Right.
I'm like,
you're certified.
Yeah. How much am I supposed to sell? And they're like, as much as you can. I go,
so you're like, where's the quota?
Is there a minimum? They're like, no, there's no minimum.
How do you get fired?
And exactly. Like I was trying to figure out how to keep my job.
Yeah.
And, later down the road, I realized all the companies were like this. So it was like, that's weird. I just thought I thought it was unique to them at the time. And I said, well, okay, I'm not that kind of guy. Who sold the most? What's the most anybody has ever sold? And about that time, this kid comes walking in, 19-year-old kid. So now it's me like coming in the door, and he's got his hat on like this,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And he's got like the Nike t-shirt on and the silky like basketball shorts and Nike shoes on. I'm like, oh my goodness, really? And they're like, hey, Brad, how many did you sell last week? And he's like, 19. I go, that's the record right there. That's the most that's ever been sold. I went, all right, so I got to sell 20. That's the deal.
Yeah.
So we go out, and I sold 22 the first week. I sold 24 the second week.
Jesus.
I called my wife.
Were you guys doing canvassing back then?
Yeah. So
you guys were going canvassing?
Canvassing, and telemarketing was still a thing, so you could actually call and set appointments too.
Right.
So you can have kind of both. You get an appointment from a telemarketer and then go to get everybody around them. And I called my wife and I said, hey, honey, I think I just made $46,000 in 2 weeks. Yeah. And she goes, no way. I said, well, if everything is what they say it is, then I have. And so we need.
Because you were just counting the commission.
Just like they told us average commission was about $1,000 a job.
That's one of the signs I've seen of top performers, by the way. They like immediately start counting how much money they're making. Because that's what keeps them on track of the.
Like what's the math of the? It's a math equation for me at the time. And so I said, we need to sit down tonight and have a conversation. So I went home, we sat down, and I said, look, this seems like something that could be really good. And I feel like we could set ourselves for the rest of our life, but it's going to take some effort and sacrifice on my part to do that. So what I'd like to ask is 2 years grace. She's like, what? I said, 2 years, I'm going to work my butt off. I mean, 80, 100-hour weeks. I don't care. I'm going to learn this thing inside out, backwards and forwards, better than anybody ever learned it before. I said, because I see so many weaknesses and deficiencies.
Right.
And this is just this one company I'm working for. I'm wondering what everybody else is like out there.
Right.
And so she said yes. And so we had 2 little kids. Like, she's going to take care of the kids and take care of the house, the whole bit. Just let me go do this, which I'm grateful for. A pretty amazing woman to do that.
Yeah.
And so I dug in, and the first 3 months I sold 108 jobs. And they're like, hey, do you want to be sales manager? I said, sure. What's the job description? They're like, we don't know. We'll just get people to do what you're doing. Yeah. And I went, okay, here we go again. Get people to do what I do.
It's just like the universe kept calling you to be a coach.
It's pretty much how it goes for me. I whenever I go into a place, I'm always looking for where could we be more effective, more efficient, any weaknesses, how can we make things easier, not harder? And more repetitive. The more you can repeat something, the easier it is to track it and make sure it's better. Yep. And so they were like, hey, we want you to be sales manager. I went, that sounds great. Tell me what the job is. And they're like, you tell us. I'm, well, okay, I need some time. So I told them, hey, I need some time to put this together. So I sat down for the next couple months, and it's winter time in Minnesota, so you're not selling or anything. Yeah. So I had some good time to work on it. And I put together this big, long proposal.
Wait, so I thought you were in Wisconsin, so you had moved?
Right across the river. No.
Okay,
I lived in Wisconsin, drove across the river into Minnesota.
Got it.
And go, Pack, go, right?
I feel like it's a rite of, like, as soon as you said I moved to Wisconsin, and that's how my home improvement story started, I feel like that's a rite of passage for, like, like moving to Wisconsin for a little bit. So you could get, But anyway.
So, well, Texas was kind of Mecca, right? Like, this is where all of this started, was Waxahachie, Texas. Like, I know the history all the way back to the beginning, like who their original families were and like how it all started back in the, like early 80s is when all of this whole thing started. You had the Needham family, the Haight family, the Drury brothers, the Pearson brothers. They were all kind of from that area. And
those were the roofers
they were the originals. They were the originals that kind of started the whole insurance thing.
Interesting. Yeah. So like insurance was like a new concept in the 80s. Yeah. What was it that allowed it to happen, like insurance roofing?
I think that a storm happened and people needed their roofs replaced. Happened in Dallas. And I'm sure it had happened before, but it just wasn't this magnitude in this particular case. And they figured something out. Like, this insurance company will take care of it. I think before that, homeowners just said, hey, replace my roof.
Right.
Somebody along the road went, hey, my insurance company is going to pay for it. Bright Roofer goes, hey, I wonder if I can get any other insurance companies to pay for it. And all of a sudden, there's this new industry.
And that was in the 80s.
That was in the 80s. Mid to late 80s is when it really kind of caught fire.
Wow. That's why I end up being, like, Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport is like my second residence now, because Mecca. All the roofers are in Dallas.
Insurance
Interesting.
restoration mecca is Dallas, Texas. Second would be Denver, Colorado, probably.
That's where it all started.
And then Chicago and Minneapolis are pretty.
So there was no law that got passed. It was just people figuring out that you could actually use insurance to actually cover for the, because homeowners insurance.
That's what I understand, at least. Yeah, there was no law change or anything like that.
Are those companies still around, by the way?
Yeah, some of them are actually.
Interesting.
I believe Needham Roofing is still around. I'm not sure if Drury is. Marty Haight was one of the originals, and he's passed since that time. But brilliant guy.
How did you get to know? Like, because you were not doing roofing.
I was not in their group, right? And so this new group had spun off. Like, that's a big thing in the insurance industry. You spin off.
Yeah.
And they had spun off from this family called the Hollingsworths, which were one of the originals as well. Into this new company called Suburban that had a spinoff to this new company ABC in Minneapolis.
Yeah,
which is where I got started with one of the original guys that spun off from those families.
I see.
Rocky Schleifer. High fives, Rocky.
Was that the guy with the blonde hair with the California?
No. Rocky was the guy that knew something about roofing. Okay. What Rocky was great at is making you feel like you were wanted, you belonged, and that everything was going to be great. He was really good at that.
And so then you found yourself in this kind of like, it's always interesting in these periods in history where you think like usually when something special happens, there's like a group of people that's usually behind it. And then that group of people then ventures off and starts doing their own things. It's like when people talk about the PayPal mafia, like the people who worked at PayPal. It's like Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, who was the first investor in Facebook and founded Palantir, the people who founded Yelp, or like PayPal, and the people who founded YouTube and LinkedIn. There's like all the PayPal mafia, and there's like a bunch of other companies. And then you think of the Renaissance, and you think like the fact that Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo and all those guys worked it, like they literally were around the same. So the way you're describing it is like there was this big moment that happened in roofing.
What probably the big moment was, for some reason or another, there was a hailstorm in Indianapolis. And so that it moved into the Midwest. And so you had a different crowd of people there versus what you were used to in the South.
Right.
And then back-to-back years, which is 98, is when the storm happened in Minneapolis. And I would say you got some pretty smart folks involved at that point.
Right.
And there's been a lot of really big, powerful, strong, sustainable companies that have come out of that Minneapolis region. Built Strong would be a good example.
Yeah.
Tony Flatom's been around. Cedar Valley, those guys have been around for a long time out of there.
And then the whole insurance system. And now you have it like super
Frankie
developed.
Manello, again, shout out to him, a good guy with Cedar Valley.
And so then you got into the insurance business. You started, again, same thing. You started rising up the ranks, became a coach, and started managing people. So what happened next?
So they said, be sales manager. We had done, about $4 million in business. I came back to him with this proposal, all written out, spreadsheets of how the numbers were going to work, where the money was going to go, who was going to get paid what budgets we needed. I put it down in front of him. I said, hey, I think we can do 2,000 roofing jobs between January 1st and December 31st. And they kind of looked at me like I was insane. I said,
how many people?
As many people as I needed.
Yeah.
So they're like,
you just laid out the plan.
It was a math thing, and I knew if I got 50 sales guys, we'd be able to get there.
Right.
And so I laid out all the metrics for all that, and they went, no way in the world. And I said, well, anything less than 2,000, you pay me this. Right. Anything over 2,000, you pay me this extra percentage on top, but retroactive, like it goes all the way back to the beginning.
Right.
They're like, yeah, absolutely. And signed off on it. And by my birthday of that year, September 4th, we had done 4,137 jobs, like sold. Yeah. It was pretty incredible. It was like crazy numbers. I'll never forget that number as long as I live. And then we actually went and opened another office in Chantilly, Virginia, because there was a storm there. And we did another 1,000 jobs before the end of the year out of that location.
And you were like not even 30 at this point, right?
No, I was 29 years old.
Yeah.
29 years old. And so that was the genesis of what happened, though, is that bonus I was supposed to get. Their justification was, you're not going to get the bonus because we're going to get you some help. I'm like, well, I didn't have the help, And so I earned that bonus. We want to do something, renegotiate for the future. That's fine.
Well, that's the good old, your top performer's making too much money, so you got to cut down the commission. Like, age-old problem.
And word of warning to every single owner that's ever owned a business, if you've promised something, deliver something.
Yes.
You be a person of your word. I've paid people on commissions and bonuses where I wish I didn't have to, but I said I would, and I did.
Right.
And so that was when I decided I was going to go start my own.
Okay.
And started my own in 1999. Did fairly well with that. Yeah, we were $5 million first year, $21 million the second year.
Holy crap!
First year, I just wanted to get systems
and that was a
down.
storm restoration business as well.
Yep. Same city.
One of the things I wanted to ask you. So you've been, you've seen everything that there is to see in this industry, especially in roofing. What do you see? Like back then, you talked about like a really crappy sales process. It's so funny how you talk, because we're talking about the 80s and the 90s. Mm-hmm. And you talk about like going to these companies that don't have a sales process. And I feel like I'm listening to like you talking about right now, where you go to companies, they have really crappy training. They have no idea about a sales process. And it's almost like this thing that gets like rediscovered every single generation because people forget it. Why is that? That like, You talk to companies back then like gyms. Like I'm literally thinking of gyms right now, how like some gyms don't even have a sales process. They just have like, chaos. And most roofing companies and most home improvement companies, they just kind of have like, they just wing it. Why is it that this is one of those like, it's like you would never expect that in medicine, that doctors would have to like relearn what like what the previous generations, why is like, but I get a sense like the knowledge of sales training, sales coaching, it's almost like lost, and then it has to be retaught.
Well, think
over
about
and
the
over
industries
again.
you just mentioned. You mentioned home services, health clubs, right?
Yeah.
Pretty low barrier of entry, to be honest with you. Like a high school degree, maybe. You don't even have to have that. Like if you can prove that you can do it, then you can do it. Where a doctor, you got 10 years. It's this education.
It's required.
Thing. And so to put in systems and processes like that takes effort.
Right.
It takes knowledge and understanding of why you have them, those metrics. And so when somebody spins off without understanding why those things are in place, they simply just copy. But no copy is ever the original.
But they don't understand the first principles.
They don't understand the first principles, so it's simply a copy. It's not the original. And
so then kind of you get people like copying out of copies, then eventually
I'll give a great example. Whenever I first got started in this, they have this agreement that's called a contingency agreement, which is this agreement that really doesn't mean anything, to be honest with you. It's a handshake on paper.
Yeah.
But it had certain things in it that were put into it because of the psychology behind it, the way it was organized, the order in which it was done. For example, it had this area for delivery instructions on it, which you would go, why are they delivering? Who cares about that? We're not ordering. This is just a contingency. And that's what most people think that are copying. So they take this copy over, we go, we don't need that, and they just get rid of it. But what they didn't understand is the reason those delivery instructions were on there was so that you asked that question at specifically that time in a specific manner. So, Mr. Jones, would you prefer for me to put your materials in front of the third garage door or underneath the basketball hoop?
Yeah.
Basketball hoop. That dude's signing. I now know that he's going to sign. I now know that he's my client.
Right.
I now know that I can go on with the rest of it. But if you don't have that, you never have this point where the guy goes, hey, wait a minute, I never said I was doing it.
It's the assumption
close. Yeah. Right. And so as time went on, I watched those agreements change because of laziness and lack of understanding.
And like in insurance, one of the things I wanted to ask you was, it's like in insurance, it's usually, and we kind of we've kind of poked fun a little bit about it. But in insurance, usually in roofing, you have like, the retail roofers who like actually have to like do the whole hour appointment, convince the homeowner.
Yeah, they hate the insurance guys.
Yeah. And then the joke is like, oh, the insurance guys are just like taking orders, right? Mm-hmm. And so, but clearly there is a difference between a top performer who can bring in 23 sales in 19 versus somebody who's just like putting in the bare minimum. What's the difference in insurance particularly between somebody who can actually generate more deals, have a higher conversion rate, actually, like what's the main difference given that, like you said, it's like an easier kind of lower barrier to entry than other.
Yeah, there
home
was
improvement projects.
another guy in my training. I identified him right away. I went, okay, that guy's got some talent over there. He's got a history or a background somewhere in sales.
Yeah.
And I went up to him after our second day of training. We're going to get cut loose. I went, hey, you want to make a bet? He's like, sure. What on? I said, let's see who can sign the most this week. He's like, I'm in. I said, $20.
Yeah.
He goes, I'm down for that. I go, well, there's a catch. Don't say yes just yet. He goes, what's the catch? I said, when you lose, you're going to have to give me that $20 in front of everybody in the sales meeting. He goes, you mean when you lose? And I knew we were going to be friends right then.
Yeah.
And I didn't pay him that $20 very often. And for the first 9 weeks, I didn't pay him.
So is it more the drive, the competitiveness? Is it just like putting in more reps, knocking on more doors, calling more people?
We both had skill coming into it.
Got it.
We both had actual sales training and skill behind what we were doing. And we understood the magic of it, that applying that to this world where the homeowner isn't really having to pay out of their pocket, somebody else is paying for them, we could create value that nobody else could create.
I've noticed that it's almost like, because we've launched in different industries, we have like windows and siding and bats and kitchens. And so one of the things I've noticed is that there's certain industries where it's like, the sales is not just like, oh, this is going to take you to the next level. It's like, if you don't have this, you're dead. You know what I mean? You cannot operate as a business. So like, I feel like in insurance, like you can get by with just somebody who's putting in the bare minimum and just like make the reps. If you have a hailstorm that shows up, then you have a great year, regardless of, having great coaching or not and great systems or not. But then when you do have a top performer that has that natural ambition, you're obviously going to see that difference in results. Whereas in window sales, right? If you're not closing like 30%, 40% of the time, you're cut immediately because the company cannot, you have to make the sale.
Yeah, it
right?
costs too much to generate that opportunity for them to keep you and lose it.
But then at the same time, it's almost like the industry, it's like almost like this natural kind of laziness that you get because you get a big year because of a hailstorm or because of a weather storm that you kind of forget. Happened to a lot of the solar companies, right? Where it's like, solar's so easy, solar sells itself. Oh my God. And you see the solar guys running around without a process. And then what happens? Interest rates go up, the financing gets harder to approve. People going out of business left and right,
no skills.
They don't depend on themselves. They depend on like the macro conditions of the industry.
Correct.
Which is something you would never see in like a window sales. Like some of these companies have been around for 30 years, like getting the hard sale always done.
That's why it was so fun for us, because once I did start to build up my company, I'm like, okay, so what can we do that's different? That's always my thing. Like whatever everybody else is doing, I'm going to almost do the polar opposite of that.
Yeah.
So everybody's doing this storm chasing thing, right? Like they're going to go chase a storm, work that storm, and then when that dwindles down, there's another storm. They're going to go move to that one. That was
right.
And you would hear it all. We don't want a storm chaser. We don't want a storm chaser.
Right.
I'm like, okay, so how do I become different than a storm chaser? And so we sat down. We built out a strategy that we were going to go after only markets that had 500,000 people or more. That the storm hit an affluent area. That there was more than 100,000 claims, so we would be patient. Like we weren't just going to go run off anywhere. And then whenever we went, we were going to do 2,000 jobs in the first 18 months. Like we're going to get to 2,000. But then we weren't leaving. We were going to have such a great client experience, such a great customer experience. We were going to turn that location into a retail location because we have all these great reviews, all this great customer experience.
So the storm is a way to get in.
The storm was a way to go and literally
deliver a great experience.
Create your awareness in a market fast.
Yeah.
And so these guys that were dominating their markets, when a storm would hit, we would come in and dominate through our marketing and our efforts and our strategy. And when everybody else would leave, we stayed.
You stay.
And we're now the big boy in town.
And now, and when they need anything else, you call you back and be like, oh, I remember Jim's company, they did a great job. Oh, we need to have some, like a roof is leaking now. So let's.
And we had that set up where we were sending out a monthly newsletter. We were doing our marketing that we went the traditional retail side of marketing, billboards, the whole bit.
I want to double click on two things here because I think this is really important for everybody to like learn from. So one of the best things that the top sellers in any industry, one of the things that I've noticed that they do, and we try to do the same thing at RILLA, is that they really, before they even start the sales process, they're really good at marketing, right? Like marketing begins the sales process. And they're not really sales driven, they're market driven. So before they even start trying to put a sales process together, they define who is my customer, right? Because not all markets are made equal for all products, right?
No.
So what you said right there, we went after, storms that would hit affluent areas, right? Higher margin, higher propensity to be able to afford a retail job.
We got much more specific than that once we were
There's probably like 17 different variables that you looked at to say like, this is the right customer for us and this is not. What that allows you to do, it allows you to be so great as a company, not just as a sales organization, because it allows you to say no to the right kind of deals. And it makes you honest. It says, hey, if you're this kind of customer, I can totally help you because our entire operation is made to serve you and deliver an excellent experience. You cannot deliver an excellent experience for everybody in the world.
No.
Especially if you're getting started a smaller company. You can deliver an excellent experience for a few people, though, if the right kind of people, if you define them properly and then they have the good attributes that you need. And so it's not just like, oh, we have a product, let's sell it to everybody. It's like, no. There's the product, there's the market. Who's our market? And defining that very, very distinctly.
So it's funny that you mentioned that because you hear targeted marketing, building your avatar, that kind of thing, right? And who is your ideal client? And we took that same concept and we said, okay, I don't want to hit the target necessarily. There's somebody specific I want to get. So we called it bullseye marketing. Like I want to, and not just, a dartboard, right? Has the center rings and there's two of them actually. There's a red and a green one. The red one's the one you want. The green, that's the 50-pointer, and then 25 points outside of that, then the rest of your dartboard. So we took that concept and we said, okay, who's the perfect one? Literally, like who's
like the very, very top of the top.
And so we looked at who we were as a company, and we were highly competitive. I was intentional about who I hired. They were all athletes. They had played sports. They were competitive people.
We also hired athletes at RILLA. That's awesome.
You say it on your shirts.
Yeah, sales
I've
is
been
a sport.
saying it for 25 years.
Yeah, sales is a sport. Yeah.
It's a competition, man. I'm here to win. I want to be at the top of the board. And so we took that concept and said, okay, with that, if that's who our ideal client is, successful athletes, who are they? And then we would get really specific by guy. So for me, my guys were golfers. That was my bullseye. And even more specific than that, golfers that live in communities that are gated on a golf course with specialty roofing material.
Wow.
So that was how like detailed it was.
That is exactly what I'm talking about.
Because I could market specifically to them. I could send them a letter.
You built an entire process that's built around it for their needs.
I could send them a letter that I couldn't send to anybody else. Hey, you've had a storm. Hit your home. Here's the map. That's your house right there.
Yeah.
Every single inspection I get in this neighborhood, I'm going to give them a case of Titleist Pro V1 golf balls.
Right.
That doesn't work in just any neighborhood.
Right.
It works like a charm in that neighborhood.
Oh my God.
Half the houses call you and say, hey, come inspect my house and bring the Titleist Pro V1 golf balls.
Yeah.
Hey, here's another cool thing. If you actually go with us, we're going to put all the names in the hat from this entire neighborhood, and somebody's going to get a set of Titleist AP1 golf clubs.
So that's the best. It's so like, okay, so you have people who have natural sales ability, but then you have sales organizations that are organized not around just a sales process, but around an entire market.
Right.
And they really go like hounds to attack that very specific market. There's always a book that I recommend to people. It's called Crossing the Chasm, which describes how to market. It's mostly for tech marketing, but the way they describe winning markets and like doing sales, it's like literally you're invading Europe, right? You're the Allied armies and you're invading Europe. And in order to win Europe, you can't just attack Europe from all angles. What do? You assemble the largest armada the world had ever seen, and you go for this one tiny little beach in France called Normandy. And you attack that point so you can set up your base and then start growing from there. So you picked golfers, right?
That's the exact idea. Like if I'm throwing darts at a dartboard, I'm trying to hit that bullseye.
Yes.
But I'm going to miss every once in a while, right?
Yes.
I'm not going to hit the broadside of a barn. I'm going to hit just right around it. Who do golfers that live in affluent neighborhoods know? They know other affluent people. Yeah. That was our referrals. And they might not be in a golf course neighborhood, but they're going to be probably a pretty nice
When
house.
People ask them, who do you use for your roofing work? The golfers are going to say, I had a great experience with this company because you literally targeted them with the best possible experience. So it was going to beat out the competition.
Think about who they are too. They're attorneys, doctors, developers.
Yes.
And
it branches off from there.
Yeah, those developers that develop properties and stuff like that. Well, what better? Like, hey, now I got 100 houses for you to do. Okay, we'll go do those too.
We call that in tech, we call that an ideal customer profile, the ICP, like defining who is your ideal customer profile and being very, very, like not just defining it, but tweaking it, iterating anytime you find something
We're ridiculous about it. Each one of us as individuals had our ideal client. So you had the one that was that they had kids in sports programs. So that was a target market. So we could specifically go after those sports programs.
Yeah.
And so we got very specific on each and every person. Softball. Like, hey, this guy's a big, huge softball player.
Yeah.
So he's going to go after all the softball
And
stuff.
it was like a very easy way to relate.
Yep.
Like, we are athletes. We're going to sell to people who are doing the same
You're
thing.
going to get a brand new power cell worth bat that's worth $300, if you go with us type of thing.
So you see that's like what I want people to understand. It's like the best. Like, okay, so you have natural sales talent, but the best of the best of the best sales teams, they come behind a really good marketing structure that's trying to find the right person for the right buyer, the right product for the right buyer at the right time. That's
Yeah, and you usually have a two-pronged attack. You have the broad, right? Like I got billboards and I've got, the advertisements that I would put out. But if you don't put that with the specific, I don't think you maximize the opportunity.
You don't maximize it because the marketing doesn't feel like very targeted, and then everybody has limited resources. So if you're trying to market to everybody everywhere all at once, then you're really not marketing.
Well,
to
ask
anybody.
a room full of roofers who their client is.
Yeah, what are they gonna
Everybody with a roof.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm like,
exactly.
You tell me that trailer house is 2 hours away that happened to see one of your trucks that's like one of your clients?
Yeah.
No offense, I want to put the roof on. Certainly, if you called us, I would take care of you. But that's not who I'm after.
Yes, it's like when people like talking about like how to even start building a sales process. First, define who the hell you're selling to, because
100%.
the process is going to be fine-tuned. Like, what makes you special if you're selling to everybody? Okay, well, there's 100 and 200,000 other roofing contractors that are also selling to everybody with a roof. So what differentiates you? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, everybody tries to build value and differentiate, but if you're selling the same thing to everybody, which is like what everybody's like, isn't roofing like a $50 billion industry or something like that?
I think it's actually probably a little more than that.
It's like $100 billion if you include
yeah.
commercial or residential or whatever it is.
Yeah, it depends on the year. It has a lot to do with that. But
so it's like, if you're selling to everybody with a roof, okay, you're tackling $100 billion industry.
Yeah, I just
boil the ocean.
I just want $1 billion.
Yeah. Right? So, but if you get to like, it's like the best companies. Like, okay, you think of this is a lesson that I want everybody to get because it's so important. Like, people think like, okay, Facebook, is a great industry. Like, it's a mega $1 trillion company. Amazon is a mega $1 trillion company. They didn't start that way. They didn't start selling to everybody everywhere all at once. They didn't start that. Facebook, you know what their market size was when they started? Yeah, 5,000 Harvard students. No, not just college students. Harvard students.
Just Harvard.
Their market size was 5,000 people who went to Cambridge, Massachusetts to go study at Harvard. That was their market size. When they got, all their product, all their marketing was built towards Harvard students. Literally, all you could do in Facebook back in the day was sign up you needed a harvard.edu email to sign up. Yeah. And you could see all of the classes in Harvard, and you could see what classes people were taking and if they were dating anybody. That was Facebook. There was no news feed. There was no pictures. It was that.
It was just a check mark, a yes or a no.
Yeah. It's like, what classes am I taking? And so you could see who's taking classes with you and if they were single or not. That was it. That was Facebook. And then from there you start going into the Ivy Leagues, right? Because they're kind of like Harvard students. Then from the Ivy Leagues you start going after schools that are not, Ivy Leagues like Stanford and MIT, whatever you go to school. Then you go to the States. Then you all of a sudden you find yourself in like a year or two owning the entire college market, because what you want is that base of like really, really powerful kind of fans.
Who do you want your early adopters to be?
Correct. And then defining your entire marketing, your entire sales process, your all of your operations for that one tiny little segment of the market that then absolutely loves you and takes you all the way, right? Yeah. That's the biggest difference that separates $1 million contractor from a 5 and a 10 and $100 million contractor, is that the $10 million contractors, they figured out who they're.
Well, it's the thing. Like, it's one of the things that boggles my mind the most. A lot of people come to us and say, "Hey, we want you to help us grow and scale our business." We're like, okay, great. What does that look like to you in the end?
Right.
I want to be a $100 million business. That's the most common one. Every once in a while we'll hear 50, but it's like, why that number? I mean, why not a 101 or 95? Or like, why specific? What's that get you that you're looking for? And some of it's achievement. They just want to hit a number because they want, this competitive achievement thing. But most of it's because they just don't know. They're just hearing what the world's telling them they should do or be, instead of really thinking about what should they be for them. And So when we look at this whole process of putting one of these businesses together, we've got to realize that what you're doing is you're building a vehicle that allows you to live the lifestyle that you want. And most people are building really crappy vehicles.
Yeah.
They're building Yugos out there.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take much. It really doesn't take much to have a little bit of observation.
Yeah.
Like the biggest one out there, Power Home Remodeling, 1.7 billion or something like that. I think they did it last year. Okay, so what are my observations of Power Home Remodeling? Well, first off, really incentive-laden culture that they've built. A pretty competitive culture that they've built. There's a growth culture, like I start low and I work my way up, right? Like there's some of this kind of thing.
Similar in West Your Home, where it's like a culture of promotion and like growing within the company.
Training is core. I mean, every day. You can't even talk to somebody. Like you go to work there, you're going to train for 30 days before you ever even talk to somebody.
Yeah.
So if that's really successful and I can observe that that's really successful, why wouldn't I start to institute some of that into my world? Because back in my day of doing this, I was looking at like the diamond selling system and Sears Home Improvement.
Right.
Their multi-billion-dollar organization. What were they doing that was great, but also what were they doing that was causing a problem?
I can tell you the amount of customers that we have that came out of the Sears School of Sales, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like with all the Sears guys where, you know, like I met one of our customers down in Houston recently, and he told me that literally he used to work for the Sears guys, and he was like a kid, right? Just like out of school, 19 years old or whatever. He goes into the home and back in the you used to have, how do you call these phones that you connect to the wall or whatever? I don't know how to, like the dial, the actual phones.
Yeah.
How do you call those phones?
Just a phone.
A landline.
Oh my goodness. I'm really old. He doesn't know that.
I was like, how do you call one of these, but again, the wall?
Yeah, it's connected to the wall, making it a landline.
So he told me a story where he's like, he had to call in. So he had to call his manager and say, you know, do a drop-in call. Yeah. And you use the homeowner's phone to call the manager. And he said, like, you know, listen, like, you know, like we want to do a drop call, and the manager tells him, like, listen, it's 42 minutes in. You shouldn't be calling me. Based on what I saw, you've only been there for like 42 minutes. You shouldn't be really calling me until like an hour and a half from now. So I'm going to hang up the phone and I'm going to call you back in an hour and a half. If you're not there in the home, then you're fired. And so he told me this story that the customer was literally like, because it was kind of at the end of the book, he had done his whole pitch in 45 minutes. He's like, kid, he doesn't know what he's doing. And the homeowner said, like, and he's so scared. And he literally tells the homeowners, like, hey, guys, like, my manager just told me that like he's going to fire me if I don't stay here for like an hour and a half. I don't know what to do. And he was just very honest. And the two homeowners were just like, listen, it's late. It was like 9 p.m. We're going to go to bed. So, you know, you can just make your way out and leave and just close the door and shut the lights off when you're good. We're going to go to bed. They go to bed. And he's just like terrified. He just sits there. He just waited for like an hour and a half.
That's awesome.
And then manager called in and he was like, yeah, they went to sleep. I couldn't get to sleep. And the manager's like, well, at least you stayed there. So you got the, you got the ball.
You get to come back tomorrow.
So yeah, to come back to we'll give you some training. Like that was the Sears, man.
And that was really the way it was. Yeah. And in the health club world too, we were very much that way. Just this hardcore, like, I remember they had what I now call a self-fulfilling prophecy. They had this term, and this is why that manager was running across the health club to like grab me, because they had this saying, B-backs don't come back.
B-backs don't come back?
We'll be back. Okay, so I need to think about it. They would say, "I will be back."
I'll be back.
We're going to go have lunch. We'll be back and let you know.
Yeah,
type of deal. And they would say, "B-backs don't come back." And it took a little while for probably 3-4 months, and I finally sat down with the owner and I said, "Hey, you guys use this term all the time. It says B-backs don't come back." He's like, "Yeah, because they don't." And well, I go, "Yeah, but you've created a self-fulfilling prophecy." He goes, "What do you mean by that?" I said, "Well, because you're assholes. And because you're assholes, they don't come back. But if you actually like treated them with respect, and you had solved their problems for them, created a great system for them, and trained your salespeople well enough to understand like when somebody does need the time, I think you'd find a lot of those people actually come back." He goes, "No." I went, well, can I test it? Like, you allow me to test it and let's see what happens. 37% of my B-backs came back.
Because you built a process that would allow them to actually be back.
Well, I built the next step. Okay, so you say you're going to be back. Are you going to be back later today, or would you prefer to come back tomorrow? And they would give me a date and time. I said, well, hey, just so you know, I'm going to call you and I'm going to remind you to let you know, because my job is to help you along your health journey.
Right.
And I'm not going to let you out of it. That's the biggest thing about joining a health club, is the accountability side of things.
Right.
So even when you tell me no on the phone, I'm going to stay after you.
Yeah.
And whenever you would set it up that way, they didn't want to call you on the phone. They wanted to walk back in and say, hey, I'm going to join. And so we added that little twist to things, and it worked out really well.
That's the equivalent of today, like the one call close, which it works for a lot of companies. But there's some companies I visited, there's a lot of window companies, roofing companies that actually don't do a one call close, where they do the follow up and they do the rehash and they let the homeowner take their time, and then they actually get, like you said, half of their sales come from follow up appointments. They go back.
Well, your sales approach, they all work.
Yeah.
You know why?
Why?
Because you believe in them.
Yes.
When you believe in something, if you believe in a one-call close, man, you're going to get guys to do one-call closes, and you're going to close deals. If you believe in a two-step and a rehash and that kind of stuff, guess what? That's going to work.
It's more about the discipline.
But it's about your belief and the discipline behind it, the process behind it. I'm not a huge fan of the one-call close, although I'm going after it the whole time I'm there. But I know where to stop pressing the pedal. Right. Because once you press the pedal too far, they're done with you.
Right.
They're like, hey, I don't want anything to do with you. Get the hell out of my house.
Yeah, get the hell out of my house.
I don't want people to treat me like that, and I don't want to treat other human beings like that.
And talking about like sales process, one of the other things I wanted to mention, because I don't want to forget, because that was really good. When you were talking about your storm restoration companies, one of the things that I think you did great is you defined a really particular customer segment, right? And you went after it like super hard. In that one segment, better than anybody else. The other thing that you mentioned that was really good that companies forget is how you had a cadence of staying in touch with the customer, where you had newsletters and you would stay and you would communicate with them, and you would make sure that you were top of mind. And that's a really important thing that contractors should learn, which is like the more time you spend in somebody's head, the more likely they are to buy.
Every one of our salespeople were required to identify the thing, that's what we called it, the thing that the homeowner would keep after we left, when we were done. Like, you get finished, you're going to pick out the final check, we're going to give them something that they're going to keep.
So that they can remember.
Yeah. And so, like, if they were into barbecuing, they got a barbecue set with our logo on it. And so every time they barbecued, they were using our barbecue set. It was a nice one, too. It wasn't a cheap, crappy one. It was like a really nice one. They were into coffee. We got them a whole coffee club deal with our logo on it. Like, hey, you're going to, and a nice cup, not a crappy one, like one you really want to use. I get mugs and stuff at all these events, and I just say, no, you keep that. I don't want that. A Yeti one? Yeah, man, I'll keep that Yeti one.
Wow. And it's that, like, I'm just going to say two things here. So number one, that matters so much. We just did a study, and we published it in the RILLA Labs reports, that basically time in home, right? Like, how does it matter, to make a sale? And so what we saw was that the longer you spend in the home, the higher the average ticket, right? So the average ticket of like a $4,000 deal is like, a $4,000 deal, the average time in home is like 0 to 30 minutes, right? Mm-hmm. If you go to like a $25,000 deal, the average time in home is actually like, 3 hours, right? Mm-hmm. So like the longer you are able to stay, the higher chances that you get a higher ticket, right? Or it could also be that the higher the ticket, the longer you have to stay to make it, because it's a more, a commitment purchase. And so what you're doing with that really is that you're generating time in the person's head without being in the home.
Correct.
Without being in the home, you're actually generating time, mind share, because every time they look at the thing, that they're going to remember a little bit about your company, such that when the day comes that they actually need something, you're going to be the first thing in mind that they're going to.
See, I find it interesting. You're talking about something that's really important, because you will see, especially in the insurance world, kind of this speed-oriented thing. Like, how fast can I get to each person?
Right.
Where in the retail, in the home type world, it's like, how long can I be?
How long can I be here to build a rapport, build the value?
And I looked at both of those things and went, okay, you're not spending enough time.
Right.
And you're spending too much.
Yeah.
I think when you're there 2.5, 3 hours, that type of thing, you've probably given more choices than is necessary, which is why it's taking so long. So the ability to identify those choices sooner by doing some prep work in advance allows you to shorten up the time. And so our whole thing was, how can I take a little bit more time with these insurance folks and lock everyone?
Well,
like,
but
we don't want to miss
one. In your process, if you think about it, I think the reason why that works, why like you see that correlation between time and home, is that you're just building more mind share in the person. It's like in tech, we have a lot of SDRs, the sales development representative position. Most tech companies, they have a bunch of people literally cold calling. Like the call center has now turned into a techie startup. Like that's what, and they're cold calling people, trying to book meetings, trying to book demos, right? And there's like there's a study that suggests that in order for you to be able to book a meeting with anybody in tech, you have to, it's like 14 touch points, right? 14 touch points to like an email, a call, to just generate enough of like the customer seeing your email and be like, oh, I know this. Like, oh, let me check this out. You know what I mean? And what you're doing, what you just described there of like building a cadence so you can stay in touch with customers, you use the storm as a way in. So like a big event that you build a great experience, and then you keep the cadence going so that when they need anything else, they call you back. I used to do stand-up comedy, so I always like to find examples in stand-up comedy. It's like, that's the difference between the very greatest of comedians and the ones that are just like really good at stand-up comedy, but don't get really big. They don't get really big. So like the perfect example is Kevin Hart. Kevin Hart was one of the first people in stand-up comedy who started building a grassroots comedy movement. Kevin Hart, people remember, like in the late 2000s, he kind of came out of nowhere with like these big 2 specials. It's like how, and this was before YouTube was big, so it was hard to build like an audience online. So how did he do that? How did he, like literally his first special, it was like big arena, athletes were there, and he was already like a big deal without really being like a big movie star or anything. It's like, how did he do that? So he was really good at comedy, number one. So you have to be good at sales, right? You have to be good at your natural talent and give people a great experience. One of the things he started doing was that when he would go to a comedy show, and he would deliver, he would kill. And there was other comedians that were killing. What he would do is he would have one of his guys that would travel with him. He would start handing out this little form, right? For people to put in their name and their email, right? And every time he would go to a show, he would get a bunch of emails from people. And then he would just start sending out material, right? These little videos of him doing stand-up comedy and keep a cadence. So whenever he was back in town, guess what? He already had an audience of people that already knew him. It was like, oh my God, I'm going to go watch Kevin Hart. That's how he grew. Every time he would meet people, he would use the opportunity, the big event, generate a great experience, and be like I've gone to so many comedy shows where you're like, oh my God, that last guy, he was so good. You don't even remember his name. You don't even know where to find him. Kevin Hart is like handing out little things. And so what he did is he turned a sales process into a marketing referral network, such that when he came out with a special, everybody knew, because he had everybody on his emails. He'd be like, hey, my special's coming out.
So how do you take that thing, which that's comedy, right? Like, I want to pay attention to comedy. That's funny. It's if you're into comedy, you want to, like, he sends you a video, you're probably going to watch it.
Correct.
Right? Okay, I'm doing roofing. Now I'm going to send you a video on roofing. I'm probably not going to watch that, right? Like,
well, I've seen so
if you can make it humorous, so that can win. All right. If you can make it a heartstring story, is what we call them, heartstring. Like, hey, we did something special for, that someone was underprivileged, free roof to a veteran, that kind of thing. Those will get paid attention to. But how do you mix something else in that's valuable while still relating your name to it?
Right.
And so things like, hey, this is what's happening in our community. These are events and things like that. So we would send out the events in the community once a month and what we were sponsoring. Like, we were sponsoring these different events, and you should probably go attend them.
Right.
And people would be like, hey man, we didn't get our newsletter like, we became almost the newspaper for the events that were going on in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. And so
people would read because they wanted to be in the know.
They always knew it was us. They always knew it was us that was putting it out.
Right. So that's
and you can do it so much easier today. I mean, these Facebook groups, you could be, hey, I'm so-and-so happenings of New Braunfels, Texas, or, well, not New York, but Queens. How's that, right?
Yeah.
You got a lot bigger area here.
No, you could. It's just like trying to get that mind share, because it's like, why do people buy from people? Because, they trust you. Well, How do you trust somebody? How do you get to trust somebody? Like, who's the person that you trust the most in the world? Yourself. Why? Because you spend the most amount of time with yourself,
Well,
right?
I don't know. I think I might trust my wife more.
With your wife. Well, you spend the most amount of time with your wife more than yourself, right? And it's like your family and then your friends. Why? Because you spend a lot of time with them. So if you as a company can generate a lot of interaction, a lot of time in somebody's mind, right? They're more likely to trust you. They're more likely to buy from you. Not only can be generated in the home, obviously with a sales process where you stay in for a long time, that can be generated from everywhere before and after the sales process.
This is why I hate Facebook ads.
Yeah.
I hate the hypey bull crap. I mean, I told you earlier, we started this thing 10 years ago. There was no such thing as a home service coach, right?
Yes. And I wanted to ask you about that.
There was CCN Network, which was like more of a consulting type firm, which they're fine. It was a little old school for me, but no offense, CCN, we're all good.
Hey, Gary.
Yeah. But
Gary's watching.
Hey man, good to meet you. But there was nobody that was like one-on-one really helping you put things in place, holding you accountable. And it was just a huge weakness out there. And I was working at AccuLinks. Wait, you worked at AccuLinks? You didn't know this?
I did not know that you worked the CRM.
You haven't heard this story?
I have never heard this story.
Okay, so my insurance restoration stuff, retail stuff went really good. Had a bookkeeper steal $585,000 from me, which was not good. I learned a lot through that thing. We were able to resuscitate that. We actually created a whole commercial company doing the same thing. And during all that, I started creating some software. I actually got engineers involved, and we were starting to build this tool that it would allow me on my desktop to draw the lines for a roof, drag and drop all the accessories on it, get one measurement, pop it, and everything would be accurate. Yeah. And then I could create an estimate, an order for my supplier, and an order for my crew. And I could do it in less than 60 seconds. I want to be able to, that was my goal. That was the MVP. So we built this thing called Silver Lining. And I ended up selling my clubs, my companies, and I was going to go after the whole software thing, and I did. We got about 1,500 users on. Oh wow! For this software called Silver Lining, and at about that time, a really good friend of mine in this industry, Dave Hauser, said, "Hey, you need to meet this guy over here from AccuLinks. He's got the whole back end thing. You've got the whole front end thing. Yeah. If you two join up, it's going to be amazing." And I went, "Who is it?" And he told me, I'm like, "Nope, don't like him." And he's like, "Yeah, have you ever met him?" "Nope, just a competitor, hate him." And he's like, "He kind of feels the same way about you because I've had the conversation with him." He's like, "Why don't you guys just meet?" And so we picked, he was in Rockford, Illinois, and I was in Minneapolis. So we picked a IHOP halfway in between like the Dells or something like that. And he walks in and he says, "Hey, I'm here to buy your company." I went, "Well, maybe I'm here to buy yours." And I'm done. So I got up and walked out. It was like literally 10 seconds. About 3 months goes by. He gives me a call. He goes, "Hey, maybe I handled that wrong. Would you be interested in sitting down again and talking?" So we sat down and talked, and sure enough, I did end up selling my software to
did not
AccuLinks.
know this.
And then I became their director of sales and design for the first 5 years with my job to make AccuLinks.
When was this?
This would have been 2000, end of 2008-ish into 9-ish.
Wow.
Through 2013. Yeah.
Yeah, and AccuLinks is huge now.
Yeah, well, that's like my job, to make a thing a thing.
It's like 100 million plus of annual recurring revenue.
Somebody asked me, what am I great at the other day? And I've had a bit of time to think about it as I've gotten older.
I never knew that.
And you start looking at like my history, my thing is to make a thing a thing.
Yeah.
Like when I was doing the painting thing, there was a guy with a shop in his backyard, and we ended up turning it into doing all of the rollerblade skates, all the Toro lawnmowers, like all that kind of stuff. Built a big facility in town and the whole bit. Like it's just, I don't know, kind of what I do.
So, wow. I did not know. I did not know. Every time I meet you, I learn something new. Like I met the last time that you were like.
So I'm going in the back office of all these contractors. I'm selling AccuLinks. I'm going in there, and I spend an hour there. We get them signed up on AccuLinks after I convince them that the
Were you guys selling in person, like AccuLinks?
Yeah.
Use outside sales.
I would fly in for the bigger companies. We'd go to events and stuff like that. And then we'd sell some, over the phone type of deal. Yeah. But you're convincing somebody that we're going to take that off of your server and put it on the cloud. Like the cloud was not a thing back then. In 2008 and 2009. And they're like, no, we're not doing that. That's a terrible idea.
Unsafe.
Yeah, it's
gonna get
unsafe.
scammed in
Like,
the
no,
internet.
it's safer in the cloud.
Yeah.
I know where it is right there.
Yeah,
I can find that thing. In the cloud, I cannot find it.
Yeah.
And we would get them, take about an hour, get them sold. Okay, cool, AccuLynx customer. But then they'd ask me 1,000 questions. Like, well, how did you determine how you're going to pay commissions? How did you scale, the size that you scaled? How did you hire so many people? How did you manage that many people? Like, I was managing 107 salespeople at one time. And so there's we get to have 3 or 4 hours of that kind of a conversation.
Wow.
And after about 4 or 5 years of that, really kind of in a prayerful moment, I'm passionate about the technology side of things, but I'm more passionate about the human being side of things, helping people achieve what they're after. And I resigned. I wrote my resignation letter, flew up, sat across from Rich and went, hey, Rich, here's my letter of resignation. And he was not expecting it at all.
Yeah.
He's like, we got to do some damage control here.
Yeah.
And because I was the face, I was the one that everybody knew.
Right.
Because I'm at all the events, I'm speaking, I'm doing
teaching
and stuff. And I said, no, we're good. I'll write whatever. And because I still believe in AccuLynx, I still believe in the culture. I believe in what you're after. We did have some differences on where technology was headed. I think it's played out kind of the way I thought it was going to. So that was good. But so I resigned and I finished up some things while I was up there, hired my next person, got them trained in and all that good stuff, and flew home about the same day that the press release came out that I was leaving. And I hit the ground and my phone, this thing, went off like crazy. If you've ever flown a decent long flight, 3 hours or so, you get a couple of buzzes when you're done because you got some voicemails or some texts. It would not stop. It was like 30 minutes of bzz, 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 bzz. I was like, what is going on? So I started looking through them, and it's, a lot of people I know, the voicemails were like, hey, come to work for me, come be my partner, come run my company.
Right,
there was a lot of that kind of stuff.
Was it tech companies recruiting or contractors?
No, it was contractors wanting me to come help them with their business, and a couple of tech companies.
I did not. So that is so cool because there is a long tradition of contractors starting tech businesses, right?
Oh, yeah.
So Procore, which is a publicly traded company, multi-billion-dollar company, was a construction guy who understood that construction needed software that was in the cloud. And AccuLynx, I imagine, it was
we needed software.
By contractors
Make
for
things
contractors.
faster and easier.
You did that. Company Cam, right?
Yeah.
I think the story is that
Company Cam was the same type of story as you with us. I found them. He was with White City Roofing is who he's with. I'm like, dude, you should sell this to everybody.
But his dad was a contractor.
Yeah,
right?
White City.
Yeah, that's right.
In Nebraska. And I'm like, you should sell this to people. It's really good.
Yeah, I think what the story was that he went out there and hired on his dad's credit card. He hired some developer somewhere to develop Company Cam, and then he didn't tell his dad about it, and then it turned into Company Cam, and it was great, and now Company Cam's crushing it.
Oh yeah.
ServiceTitan, the same thing. Their dads were plumbers. They build software for their dads. It's such a great, and I think the reason that happens is because contractors who start business are naturally very entrepreneurial. They're naturally very systems driven and operations driven and then sales driven. And those are the things that you need to start a tech company.
Well, if you're systems and process and efficiency driven, you're going to work to find the ways to make it shorter.
Right.
How can I shorten the process while keeping the quality?
Yeah.
How can I do those two things? Because if I can do that, I can create more opportunities in the same amount of time.
Yeah, that's awesome. I did not know.
That's why you see it going online now. That's why you see people not even going into people's homes anymore. We're just sitting in an office behind a screen and selling people.
What's that company I just met called Roofle?
Funny story about Roofle. Joe Hoffman was one of my very first AccuLynx customers. And he was in the insurance restoration world and didn't know anything about it. He didn't know what a contingency agreement was. He didn't know the Xactimates and stuff that.
Yeah.
And so I started helping him with that. He was one of my first clients. And so he's really probably my first coaching company. I helped those guys a lot while he was all those 4.5 years. And I actually sold him a bunch of my equipment and furniture and stuff.
Wow.
He came over and picked up.
Wow.
And so to see him doing the Roofle thing is really cool.
No, it's just Roofle is like, and for those of you who don't know, Roofle is basically a tool. The way I understand it, because I only met them once, is like a tool that allows you to do online sales and roofing and virtual selling.
Yeah, online estimating for
Yes.
your roofing system on your own home.
Because they did it at their roofing company, and they just grew like wildfire. They were using the Roofle system to sell roofs all across the country, literally online. Virtual selling completely.
That's where it's going.
Completely just doing virtual selling, doing the estimates online, and now they're selling that as a software to other contractors. They're one of the best tech companies that I've met today, and it's amazing because it's like a real problem. Like they're growing insanely. They have a small team. I love these tech teams that solve really difficult problems, really hard problems for home improvement contractors because it's a real economy thing, not this like tech bubble crap. You know what I mean? It's like real people that really have needs in the home, and then you're helping the contractors fulfill those needs even better. The Roofle, it's like they're growing faster than most tech companies right now, which is a great company. And the reason why these tech companies are so great is because they literally suffered the pains themselves, and they did it. You know what I mean? And they built the solution for themselves. And so that's so cool that you.
Well, it's funny. They know the hard work it takes to build a roofing company or whatever type of home service company. I know that hard work, so they apply that same ethic into the software thing.
Yeah.
Software people aren't quite used to that type of an ethic.
Yes.
You're unique. Like coming in and meeting you that very first time, I'm like, oh my goodness, this guy's got more energy than I do. It's a rarity.
I posted a thing on LinkedIn, and people have seen it where we said something along the lines of like everybody at RILLA works 6 days a week, right? We were like 72-hour work weeks and stuff like that. And on average, our employees. And it's like you see all of the soft tech people on LinkedIn being like, oh my God, that's a bunch of garbage. Like that's a violation.
Glassdoor ratings are terrible.
All of our customers were just like, what?
Yeah.
What do you mean? Why is
we all
that
work 6 days.
Why is that news? Like I'm running leads on Saturdays. What are you talking about?
I'd be like, that's actually biblical.
They're like,
you're only supposed to rest.
My customers were so confused. I was like, I didn't get the whole controversy.
Yeah.
I'm like, our guys start at 5 a.m. We do our sales meeting at 6. They start running leads at 8 and 9 a.m. and they go back home at 9. Like, what are we talking about?
The first time I met, I was like, oh, man, okay, that's taking it to the nth degree. But that's kind of what you have to do.
So I want to ask you about technology in the industry. I mean, obviously that's so funny because like now that I think about that moment that we met, it's like you saw us and it's like, but it's not like you just saw us in the moment of serendipity. Like, how
I can see where it's going to be.
Yeah, because people talk about like luck, how it's luck. It's not luck. It's because you had all those years of understanding technology, understanding the industry. So like in a second that you meet me, you're like, this is big.
Well, I'm sitting there going, you would help my coaching if I was still owning a contracting business immensely.
Yes.
Like I don't have to go on sales calls anymore. I can have it run all the data for me. It can tell me what's working in our system and what's not working in our system. I can refine that system faster and better than anybody else right away.
You saw all of that.
No-brainer.
You saw all of that without me saying it.
I would be like, hey, how do I buy your company so nobody else gets it?
Yeah. So that was so like now that it makes sense that you tell me all this because when I saw your eyes go like this, it's like you saw the story play out before I even saw it.
Well, I see how they all connect. The CRMs, the proposal tools, the Roofles of the world. Like I see all those things and I'm like, I see where it's headed.
Yeah.
And it's, in all honesty, if I was to predict where it's going to be in 10 years from now, I'm going to be able to hop online, make all of my choices that I want to make with this type of material. And it's going to AI tell me like, hey, because I've set a budget and it's going to say that's out of your budget. And so you might choose this or this. And it's going to get me figured out with that person. And then it's going to marry me to the right contractor to do it with the right ratings and reviews based on my history of buying purchases.
Well, like I think, one of the things I've learned is that doing this is like usually like there's usually the obvious use cases that people see when there's like a new technology, right? So like with AI, it's like the automated call center. Like you can automate a call center and people call in and then the AI answers. And there's so many people going after the automated call center. In home services, home improvement, there's a great company called Avoca.ai, good friends of RILLA. Founder was from MIT. Because now you have a lot of really, really like home improvement's hot right now. And everybody's coming in here. And so there's Avoca.ai.
You sound like me as a coach. Like I was the only one. Now you can't shake a dead cat without
now
hitting
there's
one.
like so many coaches.
Somebody sold $1 million. Now they're a sales coach. Somebody did $3 million with their business. Now they're a business coach.
Yeah. And so, but one of the things I've noticed is that sometimes the best technologies are like the non-obvious use cases that you would find. So like, for instance, Google search, right? Search was not a very obvious problem, a very obvious thing that people would think like, oh, the biggest company in the world is going to be like a search company. You know, at the time in the 1990s, people were like, oh, search, what does that even mean? It was just a bunch of nerds in Stanford. You know what I mean? There was like a video in, there's like a famous clip of David Letterman talking to Bill Gates about like the internet and like kind of like making fun of the internet because it's just like radio.
Yeah.
Because Bill Gates was talking about the obvious use cases, like, well, you can live stream sports online, and then David Letterman goes like, you mean like the TV? And obviously, like the non-obvious things are the things that actually made just like search and made information more condensed. Nobody was talking about it like in mainstream media. And so with AI in home improvement, one of the things I'm seeing, it's like the non-obvious things that you would think about. So obviously you think about like online sales, you think about the homeowner seamlessness of experience. You can see that. I can see the call center. I can see into the future. One of the things that I get surprised though, it's like some of the biggest companies are probably not going to be the obvious ones. Like I just met this company. I think you should meet them as well. It's called BuildX or XBuild, I believe. The founder, Jehan, I think was at Uber. And what they're doing is they're using AI to automate the entire insurance approval process for storm restoration companies. So you submit, the technician takes, or the home inspector, roofing sales specialist, however you want to call them, they take pictures of the situation when they do their inspection. They upload it to their CRM, which is connected to BuildX or XBuild, and then everything gets submitted, and it automates your inspection form. It automates your paperwork that you have to submit to the insurance company, so that and then they maximize the approval rating, right? Because it's all perfectly done by a computer system that's trying to improve the approval process.
So from my photos, is it? Like, this is interesting to me. Like, I want to meet them. Like, is it taking my photos and going, yeah, that's damage or not? Like,
correct. It's basically using computer vision. It's a mixture of computer vision, natural language processing to basically file a report. So it's literally, because you can do this right now. If you download the ChatGPT app, you can literally take a picture of the real world and say, like, what is that?
Right.
And so this is trained specifically to identify, like, oh, is it storm damage? Is it hail damage? And then not only does it analyze it, it literally automates a description so that the insurance adjuster will be able to say, like, oh, yeah, you know what I mean? And it automates everything. And so non-obvious, right?
Yeah,
non-obvious use case that you wouldn't, you know what I mean?
But that is time that I would normally have to take, so I could reduce that time. So now my process just got a little bit shorter,
a little bit faster, a little bit better, a little bit more seamless.
A few more people.
And for the back end, it automates a lot of your operations. It automates a lot of the, it automates a lot of the back and forth. It's just happening, like, you know what I mean?
And there's a lot of contractors out there that are probably listening to this that hate this.
Yeah.
Because really and truthfully, it is a threat to your business.
Correct.
It truthfully is.
Anytime a big technology shift happens, yes.
Like I'm on the older side of the spectrum at this point. I'm one of the. I used to always be the young guy in the room, right? I don't know when it happened that I became the old guy in the room, but I'm at that spot right now.
It's happening to me already, man. I'm like,
like AI started to, like, you just started to hear a little bit about it. And I started to hear a little bit about it 7, 8, 9 years ago. It wasn't like in the last couple of years.
Right.
I'm hearing about it back then. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to keep my ear to the ground. Just like, is it gaining momentum or is it declining? And that's how I'm always looking at anything new I hear. Is it gaining momentum or is it declining? And it kept gaining momentum and gaining momentum. And I'm like, all right, now I got to learn another new thing that I freaking hate to do. But if I don't, I fall behind the curve.
Right.
And I sit and I look at my parents that I have to do any of their banking for, and like anything that's got to be done online, you got to do it for somebody because they didn't take the time. What if my parents didn't have me or my sister?
Yeah.
And how many people are sitting out there in that situation right now that are literally homeless or out of work or barely skinning by or just surviving because they did not take the time to go, hey, what's next?
Yeah.
And it sucks. We can't just, you either got to go, okay, I'm going to get on board for what's next, or I'm going to go live in the wilderness.
Yeah.
One or the other. And both are okay. Don't get me wrong. Both are okay. Just decide which one.
That's why they call them disruptive technologies, right? Because it literally disrupts the entire foundation of the entire industry or the system that it stands on. And
everybody's like, okay, so how big of a thing is this AI thing going to be? I'm like, well, you remember a computer?
Yeah.
You think that was a big thing?
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, it was a big thing. I said, you remember this thing when it came out like that? You think that was a big thing? Yeah. I said, well, just imagine those two things just got married and took steroids and became the Incredible Hulk. That's AI.
And I think that for contractors, because for the first time ever, I always talk about this, there is already a big wave of tech companies, of startups like RILLA, like Avoca, like XBuild, like a bunch of other, like Roofle. There's a lot of tech startups coming after home improvement because of a lot of macro conditions and everything else, especially AI startups, because AI is like the new thing. And one of the things I always recommend to contractors is like, and I think you understand this very well because you literally built a tech company out of this, is the contractors probably the best positioned in the world to identify the problems that actually need solving because you're literally living it every day. And one of the things that I always recommend, and this was like the founders of Stripe. Stripe is like a payment system. It's like one of the most valuable.
Yeah, they did okay. Yeah.
Well, yeah. They're like one of the most valuable, if not the most valuable private company in the world, along with SpaceX. They're worth like $100 billion or something like that. And the founder of Stripe, what they built was payments, right? And one of the things that they did was they have this advice, which is like, you basically should allow yourself to be frustrated at the mundane problems that you're suffering from in the day-to-day. Payments was not a problem that anybody identified. like payments online, like people who were selling things online back in the late 2000s, it was a pain in the ass to do payments. Like you would have to like literally, it was like such a pain, but nobody really saw that as like, everybody just accepted it as the norm, right? Everybody just thought, oh, this is just how payments happen. But the founders of Stripe was like, no, this is so annoying that I have to that I can't charge somebody for a credit card. I have to build the code myself. I have to get compliance audits so that I'm allowed to process credit card payments on my website. I can't do ACH. It's like very annoying to like process payments online. I have to like go through PayPal or some crap. It's like so annoying. What if it was better? And then they started building the whole entire thing to be seamless, right? They allowed themselves to get annoyed at the problem, right? Which is probably what happened to you when you built Streamline. Was it
Silver Lining?
Silver Lining, where you were like probably thinking of this process.
I'm so sick and tired of these guys like hand drawing things and turning them in. They look like crap. And how long it takes to take that and turn it into an order and turn it like.
But most people would not spot that. Most people would just say, "This is just how it is."
That's how I walk around in the universe.
Yes,
I'm like
developing that muscle to be frustrated by the mundanity and the problems of the everyday. Most people don't see the opportunity. They just say it's the same thing with RILLA. When we ask people about ride-alongs, they just like people don't like. It's so funny. People never think about how much time it takes to do a ride along and how many ride alongs you can actually see. We always like ask them, like, how many ride alongs did you do last month? Oh, I did 10 ride alongs. And how long does that take? It's like, about like 3 to 4 hours. So you spend 40 hours a month. That's a whole week's worth of time doing physical ride alongs. Yeah. How many? And you saw what? 10 appointments? How many appointments were you? And then we start asking them, and it's like, oh yeah, my team ran like 400 appointments last month. So I was only able to see like, like what?
Small
like
percent, 10%.
Like 2% of the totality of the appointments, 10 over 400. And like, it took me 40 hours. You know what I mean? Like, they don't even think about that as a problem because it's just par for the course. Because now there's so much tech, there's so much AI coming into the business. How do you differentiate from what's real, from what's like noise and what's hype, right? I would say, like, really try to practice that muscle that you have of like, let yourself get annoyed at the problems of the day-to-day. Like let yourself be a little bit annoyed and not just assume that it's regular and say like, oh my God, how long does it take to file an insurance claim? How long does it take a process to get approved? How long does it take to for me to take the pictures and build the estimate for the homeowner and build the case?
You made one. How many times do you get fooled by the hype?
Yes.
Like that's the thing that's really bothering me right now is you see the hype videos of me, any coach out there helping you solve your problems.
Right.
But where do I actually know whether you did or didn't?
What's real and what's not?
And what is it that I really need in coaching versus what that guy needs? Because there's a very big difference in that. And it's actually something we're working on right now.
Yeah.
It's a matrix that there's 12 things in the business that need attention.
Yeah.
And then there's 6 stages to our business that at each one of those junctures, there's something that you should be doing.
Right.
And it could be done in multiple different ways, but this is the thing that needs to be done right here, right now, at this time.
What's the problem that you should be
focusing on? And I
focusing
don't want to hype pitch you over it. I want you to just understand that this is what you need to be doing.
Yeah. So like, and that's so true. It's like so there's people always get like new hype about new tech, about like what happened with crypto. It's like, oh, the new technology. Technology doesn't really mean anything on its own. Technology is always a tool to solve a problem.
Right.
So you as a contractor are most able to determine what's real from what's fake when it comes to tech or when it comes to any new process by just focusing on your problems that you deal with on a regular basis.
Ours is we're going to press a button and this is the next thing I should do in my business.
Correct.
That's where we're headed.
That you like. That,
We're here right now. What's the next thing I need to do in my business for me specifically based on my use cases and my history and where I want to go? That's
so cool, man. I never knew you were a tech founder, but it makes so much sense. Wow, that is awesome, man. So tell me, I want to get to this because we're almost running out of time, but how did you, so you had an awesome life. This is almost like literally
it's been ups and downs. Don't get me wrong.
That's what I'm saying. It's like one of these Guy Ritchie movies where it's like I'm a coach at a gym, and then I get divorced and lose everything. Then I start doing storm restoration. I sell my tech company. So you touched on this a little bit. You leave AccuLinks. What was it that led you to believe that, coaching was needed in the industry? You talked about CCN, right? How they were around, but how did Contractors Coach Pro came to be, and where are you guys right now?
So when I landed on the plane, I had all those voicemail messages, and the last message on my phone was from my grandmother, letting me know that my grandfather was in the hospital, and I went straight from the airport to the hospital. He's of men on the planet, he's the one that I had respect for, treated most like a father, actually took care of me and that kind of stuff. And so I set all those voicemails aside, and I was fortunate enough, I got to spend the last 3 months of his life with him. I just took time off, spent it with him, took in the stories, shared the good times, got lots of advice. And he asked me one day, he goes, so what are you going to do now? I said, well, I think I might retire. I just might call it good. He goes, well, you've said that before. You've had that opportunity a couple of different times, and you're back doing something. So this is only going to last a couple of weeks. He goes, what do you want to be? I said, I want to be a college basketball coach. He's like, what? I said, I want to be a college basketball coach. He goes, you're 42 years old. Like, it's a little late in the game to be getting. I said, well, I was an assistant college basketball coach in Wisconsin. I was doing that thing. I think I could get back in there. And he goes, how long do you think it'll take you to get to where you get a? I said, well, whenever I get started in something, I usually move pretty fast. He goes, I still say, it's like, tell me this. Is it the basketball or the coaching? And that stopped me in my tracks. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to get back to you. I'll talk to you tomorrow about that. So I went and thought about it, and I said, hey, I love basketball. A better baseball player, like naturally, but I love basketball. Basketball is fun. It's an amazing strategy to it, fast moving, and I like fast moving stuff. And then I kind of thought about it, like, yeah, but I've coached a lot of salespeople. I've coached a lot of business leaders. I've coached a lot of really good friends. I've coached kids at youth group. I've coached like all kinds of people over my time, and so, and I do it all. I would do it without getting paid. I mean, I've coached little league, little kids in baseball and basketball without any kind of want of reward. So I actually truly love coaching. I love it. So I walked back in the next day and I said, hey, I think it's the coaching. He goes, well, what are you great at? I went, this contracting thing I'm pretty good at. He goes, why don't you coach that? I went, that's not a terrible idea. I think I'll make some phone calls. And so after he passed, I called a couple of contractors. My idea was I'm going to coach 2, and I'm going to go golf and fish in the afternoons. Like coach them in the morning, go golf and fish in the afternoon. I coached 2, then it was 4, then it was 8, and it was up to 16 within 8 months. Like I gotten to that level. I was like, oh God, I got a full-time job again. That's not what the game plan was. Then it started to get to be more than that, and that's when I brought Nathan on board as a coach, and now we have champion coaches in sales and HR and finance and all that good fun stuff. It's really become a thing, and I think the reason that it has is because I actually give a crap. I genuinely want to see these guys do well. We have a recipe for it that you can follow. And we've seen every way that it can possibly be done. Our contractors did $6.2 billion in business last year.
Jesus.
We've coached thousands of contractors, dozens on the
Tell
top
me a
line.
little bit of a sneak peek into the recipe for success. How have seen you at events and stuff like that?
So again, there's 12 different facets of the business.
Right.
Two sides of that. Okay. One side is foundational, one's operational. And most contractors spend their time on the operational side. Marketing, sales, production, recruiting and hiring is where they spend most of their time.
Yeah.
Technology a little bit now because they like the shiny, glitzy stuff.
Yeah.
But there's a sixth one of those that they don't spend very much time on at all because it's, and the things they don't spend time on is either because they're hard or they're boring. Training. So they don't spend much time there. Okay. So that's the operational stuff. On the foundational side of things, you have leadership, culture, process, HR, finance, and accountability. And so I identified that this thing is what we have to go through to build these businesses a long time ago, and it got even clearer as a coach. I kind of walked into it with 8, and these other 4 have kind of come to the surface. And one of the ones that I set to the side was like, I just kind of thought it was natural, was leadership.
Right.
Like I started with culture whenever I first started the coaching thing. Like, hey, let's do culture and get that in place. Then we'll build out the rest of the business. And what I started to realize is like, well, if you can't lead, I just assume you're an entrepreneur. You must be a leader, right? Like you wouldn't even think about being an entrepreneur without being a leader,
right?
If you're going to hire people, but holy hell, people do.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not a good leader. I'm going to go start a business. Why in the world would you do that? Like, let's go get some skills as a leader first. And so we identify that that's thing number 1, because if you can't lead, you're never going to build a great culture.
Okay.
If you can't build a great culture, you're never going to build great processes because people aren't going to be on board for helping you.
Yeah.
If you can't do that, you'll never have great team performance, which is what we call HR.
Yep.
Which all leads to finances, budgets, and numbers, making sure that we're being profitable and measuring, which leads finally to accountability, because if we're not accountable to something, we'll never reach further for something. And so letting people know where you're going and holding people accountable to it, even when they don't want to do it, is actually unloving. I think that's doing somebody a disservice. If I'm going to put out expectations and I let somebody do below those, I'm not helping them reach their potential.
How do you teach leadership? You always think about it as like an innate skill, or you have it.
It's not an innate skill.
Yeah. So how do you teach it?
Nobody touches anybody and goes, "Hey, God didn't touch you," and go, "Hey, you're a leader," right?
Yeah.
Vince Lombardi has a very good quote about this Packers coach. Leadership is like anything else; it takes hard work. And so there's a set of skills that are involved in being a leader. And really and truthfully, the definition of being a leader is the ability to share one's vision in an engaging way enough to get others to follow you. That's the definition of a leader. It doesn't say good leader or bad leader. So we don't believe in this concept of evil and goodness when it comes to leadership. We look at strong or weak.
Right.
You're either a strong leader or you're a weak leader. And I would say that because of the low barrier of entry into our industry, there's very few strong leaders that really put in the time and effort to learn the skills, to implement those skills, to live those skills, to be a true leader, which creates an immense amount of opportunity. Like the guy at Power Home Remodeling, I can't remember his name, the CEO. Like Power Home Remodeling has been around for years. They're not new. But like 10 years ago, this dude comes in as the CEO and everything changed.
What's one of the skills
that
contractors overlook? One of the skills that it requires for you to practice and learn and, adopt every single day of your life to become a strong leader.
So I believe there's a core 7.
Yeah.
These 7, we call them leadership habits of connectivity. Because if you don't connect to your people, they never want to run through glass for you. It's just not the case. So first thing I got to do is I got to engage them. They all start with E, so it makes it easy to remember. I got to engage them in the vision. So I got a sales pitch I got to get across to you. Everybody you've hired here, you gave them a sales pitch.
Yeah.
For lack of a better term. Now
you have to have a story.
It's got to be a great story, and that story can't be about you and where RILLA is going to be.
About them.
It has to be about them and where they're going to be by being a part of this thing.
Right.
So you sell them the story, you engage them in this vision, then you have to educate them.
Right.
So they come in and you actually have to follow through with the sales pitch and give them the fulfillment. the production, the delivery, and here's the tools, here's the stuff, here's everything you need to be successful in what we're doing. And then the third one is example. I got to set the right example. So if I'm going to expect you to work 72 hours a week, guess how many hours I'm going to work a week? I'm working 80 or 100 probably.
Yeah.
And you might not be doing exactly the same thing they're doing, but I know this about you. You could do probably just about anything any one of those guys is out there doing, except for maybe some of the really high level engineers. But every one of those guys selling out there, you've been in their shoes.
1,000%.
But that doesn't mean you're selling every day because that holds your company back.
Right.
But you're working every day and they see you working and setting that example. You asked me about the one though, right? The one where I feel like is the biggest weakness for most of us is empathy. We forget where we were whenever we started and what we went through. And when somebody new comes into the equation, we expect them to be amazing from day one. So we got to keep that in mind. But then there's also this confusion between empathy and sympathy. And if you've known any contractors at all, you know that they're not the big, tough, burly guys that everybody says they are. They're a bunch of big teddy bears. They really don't want to fire anybody ever because that's confrontation. They don't know how to handle conflict. And they want to be kind and they want to be nice. And they're like, hey, this guy's going to make it. This guy's going to turn out. This guy's going to... No, that's sympathy.
Yeah, that's not empathy.
No, that's not empathy at all. Empathy is understanding where somebody is in the shoes that they are.
Yeah.
And then forcing them through the challenge to reach their potential.
Yeah, it's like empathy is used by war generals to understand what the enemy's thinking about so that you can plan your war strategy. It's not sympathy at all for the enemy, but a lot of empathy so you can plan your battle strategy.
Exactly, because I want my guys to survive.
Right.
So that's the fourth one. Once I have a little bit of empathy, I start to get a little bit of results from people, right? So I set the example. I start getting some activity. I give some empathy, and I put that challenge back there. I'm not going to let you down. I'm not going to let you get out of this. I'm not going to let you quit. Let's go.
Yeah.
You got this. I start to get a little bit of results going on, and now I'm going to give some encouragement. Doesn't even have to be I sold something. Just you did something well. Whatever it was, you knocked enough doors today. You had a good call today. You did one thing. High fives, man. High fives. Way to go. Here's a swat on the butt. A little bit of encouragement. Encouragement will take you miles. That is what I told you about Rocky. That was what he was. He was the encouragement guy. Because whenever I gave them the proposal, the rule was none of them were allowed in the building except for Rocky. You guys go golf, go fish, go do whatever it is that you want to do. We'll run this thing and we'll just put the money in your bank account.
Right.
But Rocky, you keep coming in because you're the high five guy. Swat them on the butt, tell them how cool their car is and all that other good stuff. You're just that guy. And people need that. People are looking for somebody to recognize their value in the world.
Right.
That's what we crave more than anything else as human beings.
Right.
And so give a little encouragement. Awesome. Get a little more results, a little more discipline. And now we get this thing that we call empowerment. Now I get to grow somebody. I'm watching you do it right now. You're doing it with Garrett. You're growing Garrett right now.
Yeah.
He's a young kid. He's 22 years old. He's got fire underneath his shorts. He wants to do something special.
Yeah.
And you've given him some empowerment. You're like, hey, do this thing, do that thing. And he's doing well with it. But you're not giving it to him all at one time and like slamming it on him. It's like, okay, let's try this piece. Okay, got that piece down? Great. Here's the next piece. And got that piece down? Great. That's the biggest mistake that most of us make is we go, empowerment, great. I'm going to make this guy a sales manager. Now, if they would have made me sales manager without my past experience, would have failed miserably. And I see it happen over and over and over.
Knowing how and when and who to delegate. That's true empowerment. Like,
and giving them the actual, like, okay, I want this guy to be a sales manager. Let's just walk that road for a second.
Yeah.
Well, what are the things a sales manager has to do? Well, he's got to build reports and then report to leadership. He's got to train a new sales team. He's got to coach a current team. He's got to evaluate his team. He's got to hold them accountable. What part of that could I empower this guy with? How about you on Monday for our training session? How about you teach guys your
teach
door
them the
knock?
skills. Yeah.
Let's teach your door knock.
Yeah.
What that sounds like. But you're not just going to come in and wing it.
Yeah, you're not just going to be
On
like, here
Friday,
you go.
I want your layout, your presentation, everything that you're going to do.
There's delegation and there's neglect, right?
Yep, exactly.
I mean, so the 7 skills of leadership. So
that was 6 was empowerment.
Okay.
The last one is expect.
Expect?
Yep.
What is that?
You hold people accountable to the expectations. You said this is what it was going to be like and exactly how it was going to go. You delivered on your part. You were even empathetic when they were failing to stand up and coach and get them to where they needed to be. You gave them a high five. You've empowered them. And now their results aren't there. The things I said were standards that we do not compromise.
Hold them accountable, yeah.
We can't go back on those at any point.
Right.
I'll never forget, I had a guy, we had a contest one year. You had to sell $1 million to go on, which is still the contest today for a lot of these guys, still $1 million. That was 20 years ago. It should be $2 million.
Yeah.
So the contest was still $1 million. He had $996,000 in sales the day before Christmas. I was in my office. He's like, dude, I'm tapped out. I can't get any more. You're going to let me go on the trip, right? Nope.
Oh, he didn't make the $1 million.
It's $1 million bucks, man. Like, that's the number. Where do I stop? Is it 990? Is it 980? What about the guy that sold 975? Do I let him go? Where do I stop this thing? And he was pissed. I slammed the door on the way out, super angry. And I opened the door and I'm like, hey man, I believe in you. You got this. You're going to figure it out. Go back through your files. Everybody that you've talked to, go back to all those ones that we did the 10 to win referral program with.
The standard, yeah.
And just, hey, let's go back through them one more time. So December 30th, one day before the last day of the year, he walks in my office and he slams a file down on my desk. I mean, bam. I'm going on the damn trip, man. I'm like, yeah, all right. High fives, man. Way to go. You killed it. I knew you could do it. I believe in you. And he was like angry but happy at the same time.
Yeah.
Then we got on the trip and we were about 2 days into it. He goes, man, I'm so glad you made me do it. I would have felt like I did not belong here.
Yeah.
Every time you talk to one of these $1 million sales guys, I would have not been one of them. I said, hey, you got all the potential in the world.
Yeah. There's like all of the skills that you were mentioning. It's like, that's a lot of skills. And each one of those.
But that's only 7. Did you know there's like 37 out there that you hear in all this leadership guru stuff?
Yeah.
When you look at all of those, they all boil down to those 7 things.
And it's like each one of those things requires its own practice, its own learning, its own different set of sub skills, right? Like when you were talking about like, oh, you have to be the one who like also trains you, and like you have to be a teacher. You have to be the best kind of salesperson that there is because you have to sell a vision.
And you're not just educating them, but you're educating yourself. So you can't let go of that part.
And you have to be a coach, you have to be a teacher, you have to be a salesperson, you have to do the job, you have to be insanely disciplined to lead by example. You have to be able to set expectations in your company and hold your people accountable. You have to be able to track results. You have to be operations minded and oriented. So you have to do all of those different things. And that's what makes a great leader.
The only way you're going to do it is if you want it.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't really want to be a leader. They want a big business.
Well, they're not even consciously aware that you even need to practice leadership skills to actually be a great leader. They're just
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I think they think that it's just this, put these pieces together and we're going to have this big business.
Yeah.
But no big business. There's not one that exists on the planet that didn't start with that magnetic leader that somebody wanted to be a part of.
Yeah, the soul of the company.
And sometimes you know him and sometimes you don't. But he knows his people.
Yeah. It's like all the greatest companies. It's like you think of Apple, you think Steve Jobs, you think of Disney.
I put the picture up on it all the time whenever I'm talking about this of Steve Jobs on one side, and I got this other guy on the other side. I'm like, who's that guy? And nobody knows who it is. Oh. I put them both up there. They all know who Steve Jobs is.
Who's the other guy?
Larry Page.
Oh yeah, from Google.
And you see, you know him.
Yeah.
But nobody knows who that guy is, except for all the people that work for him knows.
Correct. Yeah. When he goes and talks, people are like, oh, that's the founder talking. Yeah. And it's every single great organization. You always think of like the great leader, right?
He had the vision from the beginning.
Yeah, because it always comes from the top, and it's just like in the culture, what you said, it's like if you set that right culture, it's so funny how you put it. It's like you set the right leader with the right culture, then the finances and everything follows. Yep. But so you can fix the finances if you have the great culture, but you can't fix the culture even if you have great finances. And over time, bad culture leads to horrible finances.
Which that's what happens whenever we work with a contractor. Most of these coaches out there are not what we call a holistic company.
Yeah.
They do a thing. Like they're a marketing coach, or they're a sales coach, or they're a recruiting coach, or they're a leadership coach, or whatever. And what that does is it leaves you in the dark about the win.
Right.
The win is the important thing.
When is it the right time to start implementing
When is
these
the right time
processes?
to do this thing versus that thing?
Yeah.
And so what ends up happening is you get sold on the hype that I need more leads. Well, do you really? Have we looked at your closing percentages? And okay, your closing percentages are poor, but why? Why Well, let's go back and look at your team performance, your HR, and what are you doing? Oh,
Right.
It's okay. So your job descriptions aren't leading to the right. Well, let's take another step back to culture. What kind of company identity are you? How do you identify as a company? Are you just an average Joe, or are you something exceptional?
Yeah.
And where does that come from?
Yeah, like identifying, like we had Coach Nick Saban from Alabama football the other day at an event, and we asked him, like, how do you know, like, how do you coach? How do you know when, like, because he was always about coaching and following the process and making sure that you could have like superstar players, and his coaching was like great. One of the things we asked him was like, how do you know when you can't coach somebody versus, when you just let them go off the team or bench them or something like that? Like, how do you know when the fine line is, like, should I believe in them and give them the coaching, or just like, hey, listen, you cannot be part of the team? And one of the things he says, like, people always mistake, like, they always think that it was like, oh, coaching. A great part of our program that we ran in Alabama was recruiting, because I learned a long time ago that I cannot coach a bad player to be good.
Nope.
And so like the way you're mentioning it, it's like, okay, if you have a closing
But recruiting's last.
Right.
Recruiting's the very last thing, because if you go after that hard in the beginning, you've got a broken system that you put them into without the support that they need. It's all going to fall apart on you.
But the recruiting comes before, even, like, because you've
recruiting is the before in your strategy.
Right.
Strategically, I know I want to recruit these superstars. In order to recruit those superstars, I better have something pretty dang special here.
Right. So it's like exactly what I'm saying. So if you have like, let's say you have a closing rate problem, and you're like trying to coach your players but if you have bad players to begin with, right? Yeah. There's nothing you can do with the coaching if you have like not good players.
Yeah, so many people are willing to hire bad players.
Yeah, like, like how you were talking about, like, you went to this company and they saw that you had natural ability and that giving you coaching was actually going to be a return on investment, right?
Right.
That matters, having the right players so that they can take the coaching and actually succeed.
Well, the funny thing is, I told you about that class. There was 10 of us in it, 2 of us, 2 that competed. We're the only 2 still in the industry.
Right.
But I identified it right away. Like, that guy had skill. And so if that's what I'm really after, and maybe you're after as a contractor, well, why don't you hire to it?
Yeah.
Instead of just hiring anybody and everybody.
Anybody that comes your way.
And if you're on this process of hiring somebody because they sound and look good, like that, they pass the smell test, no. I want people with skill coming to me. So I have to create an environment that they want to be a part of.
Yes. You have to create an entire culture that champions that respects it, that creates the right expectations. When you don't fit that mold, you don't make compromises, staying disciplined and creating the right accountability structures.
I want to hire a bunch of Garretts.
Yeah.
That's who I want to hire.
Yeah. So like the way we run it at RILLA, it's like, okay, I use RILLA more than anybody else. And like my sales manager.
Is it on right now?
No, not yet. But like me and my sales manager, we use RILLA all the time. My sales manager, I complete like 500 ride-alongs a month, and my sales manager completes like 1,000. It's like insane. We're like on RILLA all the time doing ride-alongs, and all our guys, we're coaching them, we're training them. But one of the things we also do is, before we hire you, we do a culture interview where we have 8 operating principles where we try to identify if you fit those 8 operating principles. That's the first interview that we do.
Do you need sleep? If you don't need sleep, you're going to be a good fit.
One of the questions that we ask is, we work 6 days a week, 72-hour work weeks. We ask people, like, tell me about your day. Well, like, when do you wake? Like, from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep, tell me about your day.
Does it make it hard to hire?
Oh my God, yes. But we stay to that standard. We stay to that standard. If somebody works less than 10 hours a day, and even if you're working a 9 to 5, in order to work at RILLA, if you work a 9 to 5, you have to be doing things outside of your 9 to 5. You're following your passion. You're like doing a podcast. You're doing music. You're going out. You're doing stand-up comedy. You're working. You're an engineer. You're working on side projects because you literally are the type of person.
I eat, sleep, and live it.
It's like it's called the autotelic personality, where you're like literally trying to be in the flow every single second of your day. That's what we want. We want somebody, even if in a 9 to 5, they get out of work and they just like go at it. Like if somebody, like, to me, the red flag in an interview is somebody who says like, oh yeah, man, I just like hang out after work and I just chill. I watch TV and I'm like, woo, I gotta get the hell out of the interview. So yes, we do a ton of coaching, we do a ton of ride-alongs, we do a ton of training, we do that every single day, but we hire sales athletes, right? We hire D1 athletes out of college, right? Who have the right hunger, who have the right ambition, who have the right cultural principles that they're going to align at RILLA. Without that, we cannot coach you.
How's it working out for you?
We have kids out of college that they were playing lacrosse. They were throwing balls and hitting people with sticks, a few months ago. They literally graduated and they're on track to making all of them, literally all of them, are on track to making between $400,000 and $800,000 a year.
Man, that's
so
awesome.
But that's because we started from the right structure.
But oh my God, I got to work 6 days a week.
But they have to want it. But the right people. You walk into RILLA, right, on Fridays, right? Everybody's here. I remember an investor came here on a Friday. They were like, and people were here, like it was Friday at 9 p.m. That's the only time that they got to meet with me. And they came here, and like Garrett was here, and like Matt Rodeo and Will, and they were all like happy and like stuff like that, and like high-fiving, like gonna go back to work at the office. And they asked me like, I've never seen that. And I was like, what? Be like, these people are here on a Friday night at 9 p.m. and they're like excited.
You know why, don't you?
What?
You know why, don't you?
Why?
Because you set the tone.
Yeah.
You set the tone. You were the example. I've never seen you, even when you're frustrated, you're happy. Like it's the wildest thing, but it's just who you are. So you attract people like you to you.
That's like setting the right cultural principles and setting the right example. And then, okay, then I can coach you. Then I can train you.
Well, so many people go, well, you can't find those people.
No, you can. Yes, you can.
It might take me a little longer, but I'm going to have one hell of a team.
Oh, yes, you can. We interviewed, like before we hired our first sales rep, we interviewed 150 people. And then what I realized, we did. We absolutely did. What I realized was the hiring pool that I was recruiting from was giving me bad results because I was hiring tech people from other tech companies. Tech people from other tech companies, they tend to be very lazy.
It's like hiring a roofing salesman from another roofing company.
But they tend to be very lazy, right? Like the tech companies in the last decade, they got so lazy with all this free money that they got because of low interest rates that the first thing that a B2B tech company would do is hire a bunch of salespeople. And if you hire a bunch of salespeople and you don't have enough pipeline, most tech salespeople, they're taking like 1 demo, 2 demos a week. So most of the time, they're literally just sitting on their ass playing video games and just making a couple of calls a week because you just overhired, right? So I realized I was hiring from the wrong pool. So what did I do? I was like, okay, well, I don't need these experienced tech people that are very lazy, that are not going to align to my cultural principles. Then I started interviewing athletes. When I started interviewing athletes, I would ask them about their day. They're like, we wake up at 5 a.m., first workout with the boys, then we go out, we have first breakfast with the boys at 7, then it's game film session with the coach, then we go and take Spanish class for 2 hours, then we come back at 12-second workout with the boys, then it's practice time. That's the best time of the day. That's when we actually get to play ball. And it's like literally their schedule starts at 5, it ends at 7, boom.
Yeah.
Go to RILLA, do the same thing.
Exactly.
Get up at 5 a.m., do your workout with the boys. It's the same thing. So when I identified that right hiring pool, then it became much easier, you know what I mean, to hire.
Right.
But that's because I was so intentional.
That's a marketing thing.
And so maniacal about my culture and say, this is what I need, talking about the ideal customer profile.
Yeah.
What is my ideal candidate to fit this thing? Then they come in here, they don't know anything about anything, but I know with every single bone in my body that I can coach them.
Right.
Because I cannot coach their culture. I cannot coach their drive, their hunger, all of those things. What I can coach is how do you book a next step? I can coach you that. I can coach you how to.
Because there's a talent side of sales, but there's also a skill side of sales.
Correct.
There's a really good book about the talents called The Perfect Sales Force by Derek Gatehouse.
Oh, I need to read that.
I think you would love that book. But I think he missed it. I think he missed a big piece of that with the skill side of it.
What's it called? The perfect?
It's called The Perfect Sales Force by Derek Gatehouse. Great writer. I wish I would have written the book.
Yeah.
The only reason I know about it is because the guy I hired to take my place at AccuLinks asked me, had I ever read it? I go, no. Why? He goes, because you hire like that. And I'm looking for talent. And that's what you're doing. You're looking for the talents that fit your culture to say, okay, these are the types of guys I need.
Yeah.
These specific talents fit all sales cultures, right? But the skills are a different thing. That's something that anybody can learn. Talent is something that's inside of you, natural because of the way you were raised, the environment you were in. Usually from between the ages of 5 and 15 is what sets that for most people.
Right.
But the skill side, that's something anybody can learn. Anybody can learn communication. Like they literally, if they want it badly enough, they can learn it. Anybody can learn how to give a presentation. Anybody can learn how to beat objections. Anybody can learn those things. They're just simply skills.
Yeah.
So what I'm looking at is like, does the guy have the talent and how much of the skills does he have?
Right.
Because if he doesn't bring any of the skill, if he's got the talent, he will be successful. But if he doesn't bring any of the skills, there's this time to money equation.
Correct.
Like if I can't get him up fast enough, he's not going to make enough money quickly enough, and he's going to be gone.
That's for us at RILLA. We were fortunate enough that we literally realized like, okay, this product is so good that we can kind of get anybody up to speed in like 2 months or 3 months if they have the right talent. So you can literally come to me with 0 skills. A lot of these kids come to me with 0 skills. We coach them up. luckily we have one of the best coaching softwares in the world.
I was gonna say it's a little easy for you
So
guys.
like to me, I'm able to make that trade-off and be like, if you have high talent and we look at personality, are you personable? Are you intelligent?
Right.
All right. And then you look at all the cultural principles. Like, do you have all the cultural principles that we need at RILLA? Because if not, you say, I don't give a shit. I don't care if you have the talent or the skills. If you don't have the right cultural principles, then you're out, like for any position, right? And
More companies need to be that attitude.
because culture, like you said, culture sets the tone for everything.
The second you compromise your culture and your
nothing
and
matters.
your core values, then nothing
Matters.
Yeah.
And you could have like, you
I'd rather just not do it.
yeah, like if you don't have the culture, it's like, I remember this tech founder talking about how the founder of HubSpot, I got to meet him. HubSpot's like a $30 billion company.
Yeah,
I went to meet him at dinner, and he talked about culture, how he learned it. Cause tech people, we usually think like, oh, culture is like this wishy-washy kind of dumb thing that you can't track, right? So whatever you can't track, you don't even think about. And he used to think that. And he went on he was out with dinner with a CEO that he admired, and then the topic was culture. And he was like, oh my God, culture, what a trash that. Let's not even talk about that. This is such a stupid topic. Like, let's talk about numbers, marketing, whatever. And the guy said, what do you mean culture's like the most important thing? And he was like, what? He was surprised. He's like, this is a CEO I admire. How is he like caring about this crap? And the guy said to him, was like, culture is how people make decisions when you're not in the room.
Exactly.
If you have a strong culture, you're going to have a lot of people making great decisions.
That are going to be pretty similar to you.
99% of the time, people are going to be making decisions when you're not in a room, right? Because you're doing you're doing your job, you're doing other things.
That's what I pay them big bucks for.
And that is the operating system of the business. It's the culture, right? Because you're not going to be there to make most of the decisions for people. That's why you're hiring them, because you literally don't have time to make those decisions. You need them to make those decisions, and you need them to make those decisions with the right operating system.
Yep.
You need them to make the right trade-offs the way that you would make them. And that's culture, right? It's a system that doesn't need management, right? It's low, like you don't need to police it, right? Very strongly all the time. If you hire the right people with the right principles, then they operate very naturally like this very well-oiled mechanism.
Could not agree more.
So like
I tend to define it a little bit like, hey, these are our core values we're going to live by. It sounds like you have 8 principles.
I have eight core principles, yeah.
And so when somebody's outside of that, that's when we have a problem.
Oh yeah, you have to align with all 8, otherwise it doesn't mesh well. You could have like 7 out of the 8, but if you don't have all 8, you know what I mean?
You're probably not going to fit here pretty good.
Yeah. Like and we tell people, and in our first interview, we try to see if they fit the culture first, and then what we do is we send them our culture deck. We literally say, here is our culture deck. Do you want to, do you align with that? And if you're not aligned, and we're very explicit, we're like, this is what this principle means at RILLA, right?
Right.
Maximize productive time. What does that mean? We work 6 days a week, 70-hour work weeks. That's what that means.
Yeah.
And we explain why we believe that. We believe that true learning comes when you try new things and you fail. So the more you get to try and fail, the more you get to learn and be smarter at your job.
We're doing one more day than everybody else.
Correct. One more day, which doesn't turn into like a 20% improvement. It turns into like a 10x or 100x, because learning compounds faster than the interest rate. So,
well, it's just like you said they're athletes, right?
Yeah.
So all these guys, if they were athletes, if they were any good on their team, they were doing work outside of practice time.
Completely.
Yeah.
So that's why we hire. So we hire for that. We hire for people that believe that want to participate. And if you don't want to participate, listen, that's totally fine.
Yeah.
You don't have to fit with my culture. There's different cultures, right? Like not all cultures are the same. There's many different people, many different companies. There's people who do the one called close. There's people who don't. There's people who like work 6 days a week.
We were a 6-day-a-week culture.
But that's different. Like
Saturday's money day.
Like the Google culture was different. The Google culture was not that. The Google was more laid back. It was like they were PhDs from Stanford, so they hired a culture that resembled a PhD department. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's different cultures, like you said. It's like about having the solidity, the discipline to follow the principles.
Just knowing what it is. Like the fact that you know what it is what'll keep it from being drama and chaos.
Correct.
Whenever you can't identify what your culture is and you're just hiring willy-nilly, that's where you create the chaos.
And it's so easy when you have all the principles laid out and you have explanations of how it applies in practice and what it doesn't mean and what it does mean.
Important.
It allows you to make decisions so easily. And everybody, because then they just have to look at and they make decisions so easily. One of our principles is speed. We maximize speed. And people say like, oh my God, when you maximize speed, do you let go of quality? Yes, because we believe that fast gets good before good gets fast, right? So like the faster you work and the faster you fail, the faster in the long term you're going to produce excellent results by just taking more swings at the bat. So when people have a decision, hey, I think this is a risky decision, it might fail and it might crap itself, pushing a line of code is like we say push it. Speed, right? Speed, it's better for our customers over the long term because we're in the business of innovation. So we need to try. So like
this is why our in-home sales approach ended up being 1 hour closing ratios of 51%.
Yeah.
We didn't need to spend 2 or 3 hours in the house.
Because it was about speed. How do you maximize? How do you get the homeowner to?
We were willing to break things.
That's interesting.
In order to get to the end game. And we were willing to do it faster than anybody else.
Yeah, and then you probably
and we didn't lose quality at all. As a matter of fact, our customers were happier than ever
because
it was actually one of the things that they would comment about was like it
was so fast,
so easy.
It wasn't 4 hours for an appointment. Yeah. So, anyways, Jim, I could talk to you all day, man.
Yeah. Well, we both have things to do. We got businesses to build.
So Jim, this was so fun, man. This was so fun. This is one of the funnest ones I've done. So it's always good. I've done your podcast. It's always a fun time to meet and talk. And we haven't done this in a while. So it was just like literally, and this was just my.
Yeah, I missed out on the yacht thing.
Yeah.
So I was
we did a yacht party with all of our customers a couple weeks ago. And Jim had a granddaughter who was born at the same. It was much better than being in a big boat with all these contractors. So good for you, man.
I was like, she's never going to know. Like she
should have brought the baby to the yacht, you know?
Nobody wants that.
So Jim, this was so fun, man. We hadn't done this in a while, and I honestly don't even care about the cameras. I'm just happy that we get to chat. How can people learn more about you? How can people learn more about Contractor Coach Pro?
I think the thing that any contractor that wants to grow and scale really looks at his vehicle as this vehicle that'll create a lifestyle that he wants to live. The best thing for him to do with us is to go onto our website, Contractor Coach Pro. There's a button that says Take Assessment. This assessment took us hundreds of hours to put together. We put a lot of science into this thing. If you'll take it, it's going to take you 15 or 20 minutes. If you can't take 15 or 20 minutes on your business, we don't want you anyway.
Yeah.
Just to be really clear. Yeah. But if you can take 15 or 20 minutes to fill out this assessment, it's going to identify for us the 2 or 3 things that we could probably help you with right away. Instead of being on a call and we ask a whole bunch of questions and discovery, let's get to the point of things. We actually know what it is. So when we get on the call, that's free. We're not going to charge you anything for. It's going to be a true coaching call. So you can assess what coaching really is versus the hype bullshit sales pitch that you're going to get from most others. We're going to coach you on those 2 or 3 things that would move the needle in your business fastest. And you might not like the sound of them. They might be those things that are hard or difficult, but we're good at helping you get through them. If you like coaching, great. We'd love to have you as a customer. If not, at least we served you well that day and you can take the next steps in your business. We're here to serve this industry and do it well. Our core values are important to us. We believe that our first and foremost is to love, serve, and care for an industry that provided for us. So let's provide back.
Awesome, man. So contractorcoachpro.com, go take your assessment and learn more about Jim. He's truly one of the greats in this industry. Jim, I am so happy I got to meet you literally because without you, I probably wouldn't be here today. So thank you so much for coming,
man. Anytime, man. Anytime, brother.